Chapter 63. Being forced into the ground of thousand despair was Wang Sheng's last resort. He had no choice. It was impossible for him to deal with so many experts alone, not to mention fifth-degree realm experts. Even if those second- or third-degree realm experts were a little more serious, Wang Sheng would not be their match. Even if he counted all the bullets from his sniper rifle, he only had 18 bullets. One bullet could only kill 18 experts, which was not even enough for the number of people chasing after him. Fighting them head-on was definitely not a solution, so Wang Sheng could only take the risk and enter the ground of thousand despair. If he entered the ground of thousand despair, he might have a slim chance of survival. But if he didn't enter the ground of thousand despair, he would probably be dead for sure. Wang Sheng treated the ground of thousand despair as a challenge, a survival training, and also his way of survival. His target was the worry-free city on the other side of the ground of thousand despair. That's right, it was the worry-free city that was filled with assassins, the worry-free city where one could be free of worries as long as one entered it. As long as he entered the worry-free city, no matter how big the grudges were, the people outside could only let go. Today, Wang Sheng had almost become the world's public enemy. It seemed like the worry-free city was the only way for him to go. Tang Ao had been tracking Wang Sheng, including the experts from the Tang family. Although they were a few hours behind initially, it didn't take long for them to catch up. Each of their cultivations were much higher than Wang Sheng's. If they let Wang Sheng go a few hours ahead, they could catch up at any time. Wang Sheng had no intention to hide his whereabouts in the ground of thousand despair. The experts from the Shi family were not lacking in skill trackers. They followed him from a distance, and no one dared to make a move. It was not only the Tang family who were tracking Wang Sheng. Those experts from the aristocratic families, other than those who went back to report the news, all followed him. They had no choice but to come. Not to mention the family's orders, just based on their reputation, there was no way they could turn back just like that. With so many experts chasing after a person who was at most in the first-degree realm, or even an ordinary person, he was actually scared off. If word of this got out, how could they still show their faces? Even without the ridicule of outsiders, their enemies in the family would be able to trample them under their feet. A fifth-degree realm expert was scared off by a lowly barbarian. It was simply the biggest joke in the world. Therefore, even though everyone knew that the ground of despair was in front of them and that it was a land of death, they could only brace themselves and charge forward. Basically, everyone had the same thought. As long as they could see Wang Sheng die in the grounds of thousand despair, they would be able to turn back. The ground of thousand despair was the burial ground of countless experts. 7th and 8th degree realm practitioners were not the only ones who had fallen here. How long could a mediocre barbarian survive? It was estimated that they would die within 10 to 20 kilometers at most, and then everyone would be able to turn back. From the experience of those top exponents who had escaped from the thousand despair grounds, as long as everyone was careful and had sufficient cultivation, 3rd or 4th degree realm cultivators would still be able to survive if they ran faster. Everyone had the same idea. They followed Wang Sheng and did not chase after him rashly. They just stayed far away and watched how badly Wang Sheng would die. The previous scene in the valley had really scared the hell out of them. Without absolute confidence in victory, no one would dare to act rashly. Even though Wang Sheng was sitting and resting not far ahead with a ridiculing smile on his face as he looked at the group of pursuers chasing after him, no one dared to charge forward. In fact, everyone was less than 300 meters away from Wang Sheng. Any 5th degree realm practitioner would be able to kill Wang Sheng within a few breaths' time if they dared to rush forward. Unfortunately, no one dared to rush forward when they saw Wang Sheng smile. Not long after Wang Sheng entered the grounds of thousand despair, he discovered a strange situation. The little man with battle awareness in his soul space had become extremely excited even though there was no battle. This kind of excited state was something that Wang Sheng had only appeared when he improved the primeval chaos pillar and Tai Chi fist and when he taught Song Laoyu a lesson. At other times, even if it was a normal battle, the little man with battle awareness would only be excited. In other words, this grounds of thousand despair was definitely related to the little man with battle awareness. There is even a possibility that it was related to the girl in his dream who had left the little man with battle awareness. This discovery made Wang Sheng both surprised and delighted. He was surprised that this was a dead end, and delighted that he had finally found some clues about the girl in his dream. However, at this time, Wang Sheng still had to fight for his life, so he had no time to think about the girl in his dream. As long as he could get through this hurdle, he could think about other things. Very quickly, Wang Sheng found another surprise. When Wang Sheng was about to step into a certain area, the little man with battle awareness actually gave him a strong warning. When Wang Sheng took a few steps back, the warning disappeared. After trying a few times, Wang Sheng finally understood what was going on. In the grounds of Thousand Despair, the little man with battle awareness had an intuition that was many times stronger than Wang Sheng's own intuition. It could detect some unknown dangers in advance. Perhaps it was the territory of a powerful monster, or perhaps it was some kind of extreme environment. Once he approached a dangerous area, the little man with battle awareness would give him a warning. If the distance was especially close and the danger was close, the feeling of warning would be the strongest, and it could even cause a disturbance in the soul space. What was there to be afraid of? With this surprising function of the little man, it was like having a human radar. Even in the grounds of Thousand Despair, Wang Sheng was confident that he could find a safe route. Because of this, Wang Sheng had thought of passing through the grounds of Thousand Despair to rush to Carefree City. This was no longer a dream or a fantasy, but a practical path. Why could Wang Sheng slow down and wait for his pursuers to catch up? On one hand, in the grounds of Thousand Despair, even if it was a place that was not dangerous, Wang Sheng still had to be careful, and every step he took was filled with fear. On the other hand, Wang Sheng was also digging a trap for his pursuers. No matter who it was, being followed by hundreds of experts with higher cultivation than them was not a comfortable thing. Moreover, if any of these guys suddenly attacked, they would definitely be in great danger. Ever since he killed so many people in the valley, Wang Sheng did not think that these people would let him go. Since they were all enemies, Wang Sheng did not have the habit of letting them go. These people were destined to stay in the grounds of Thousand Despair and become another batch of cannon fodder to prove that the grounds of Thousand Despair was a forbidden area. Don't look at how Wang Sheng was just sitting there, resting. Others did not know that in Wang Sheng's soul space, the little man with battle awareness had already given him a warning. Any further, and they would be in an extremely dangerous situation. If someone were to jump out at that moment, all Wang Sheng needed to do was lead them slightly, and they would die without a grave. Chapter 64. Wang Sheng looked very leisurely as he sat down unhurriedly to rest, even exaggeratedly taking out some food to eat as he ate while looking at the crowd behind him. Even without seeing Wang Sheng's face clearly, the people behind were able to imagine the expression on Wang Sheng's face right now. It would absolutely not be joy or anticipation, only contempt and ridicule, nothing else. This way of doing things, other than attracting hatred, had no other use. Tang Ao and the two fifth-stage realm experts from Song family and Sure family were still able to maintain their composure, but there was already someone who couldn't hold it in and charged forward. The person who charged forward was a second-stage realm expert from Chiu family. Chiu family's leading expert had long died, and those who were left behind were to hold the line. But since the leading expert had died, if they couldn't give the family an explanation, they wouldn't have a good ending when they returned. Originally, he was already infuriated, and now that he saw Wang Sheng's attitude, he simply couldn't vent his anger out. A mediocre trash also dared to put on airs in front of them? If this could be tolerated, what else could it be? Blood rushed to his head, and this expert from Chiu family couldn't hold it in any longer as he directly charged forward. Chiu family originally didn't have any leading expert, so no one said anything to him. Many people saw this Chiu family junior's action, but no one followed him out. Everyone wanted to see if Wang Sheng was putting on a bravado or if he really had something to rely on. Using a Chiu family junior's life to verify it wasn't an overboard matter, wasn't it? Wang Sheng of course saw this fellow who had charged out, but he still jumped up at the first instance, and with a flash, he turned behind the big tree behind him, out of everyone's vision. A distance of 300 meters, under a second stage realm expert's full force sprint, was merely 10 to 20 seconds. Those spectators who were watching coldly by the side didn't take any action at all. It was just that everyone's speed was slightly slower as they rushed forward a little. As compared to that rash young lad from Chiu family who was leading the charge, there was a gap of over 100 meters. Wouldn't they be able to see more clearly if the distance was nearer? Wang Sheng flashed behind a big tree. After he was out of everyone's sight, he did something that no one expected. With a wave of his hand, the longbow appeared in his hand. With a long arrow knocked on the bowstring, Wang Sheng charged towards the direction with the strongest warning, drew the bow, and released an arrow. After shooting the arrow, Wang Sheng lowered his body, and without saying anything, he went into the bushes at the side. He crawled all the way into the bushes, not caring how loud the noise was. Enduring the pungent smell, he quickly crawled inside. Anyway, Wang Sheng's mouth and nose were covered with a protective mask. Although the smell was pungent, it didn't make him feel too disgusted. Back when he was training on Earth, the mud that he crawled on was filled with all kinds of feces and rotting animal organs. This smell was nothing to him. When they arrived, Wang Sheng noticed that there was a lot of feces from large animals in the bushes. Looking at the size of the feces, they were basically uniform, but the freshness was different. According to Wang Sheng's judgment, this should be the toilet of a powerful monster. As for the Yao beast, it was probably not far away. Wang Sheng had chosen its toilet, so the Yao beast had not acted up. However, it must have discovered his presence. The experts 300 meters away would not know this. They should still be at a safe distance. The monster had its own habits. It would not easily go crazy when it was not threatened. So before, they felt that nothing was wrong, but in fact, it was just an illusion. They were already standing on the edge of danger. Wang Sheng's arrow directly alarmed the huge monster. Any powerful demonic beast would never allow other threatening creatures to appear in its territory. To put it in layman's terms, this was called a mountain cannot accommodate two tigers. To put it in a more artistic way, this was called how can others sleep soundly on the side of the bed. Just now, that demonic beast had just eaten its fill and was taking a nap. This was the moment when its tolerance was at its highest. Even if some food that didn't look delicious entered its territory or was active in front of it, it could still turn a blind eye to it. It was also because of this that Wang Sheng could sit there and rest. Of course, there was another important reason. That is, it was his toilet. But this arrow directly stimulated the fierce nature of the monster. Daring to attack an ant in its territory, if it did not swallow it in one bite, when would it be? Roar. An earth-shattering roar directly resounded between heaven and earth. Then, a huge brown bear with a shoulder height of more than 3 feet and a body length of 8 feet rushed out of the woods angrily, directly facing the hot-blooded expert of the Chiu family. Wang Sheng had already entered the toilet of the brown bear, even at the cost of being stained with the brown bear's feces. It was relying on the smell and the cover of the shrubs to make the brown bear ignore him. As soon as Wang Sheng's figure disappeared, the brown bear directly faced the hot-blooded expert of the Chiu family, as well as the hundreds of experts more than 100 meters behind him. 6-star, earth-shattering bear. Run. Tang Ao saw everything clearly from the back. When the loud roar reached his ears, he realized that something was wrong. Now that he saw the huge figure of the brown bear, he was scared out of his wits. He screamed and turned around to escape. The 5th stage realm Tang Ao saw the earth-shattering bear and turned around to escape. Other families didn't dare to say, but the Tang family definitely followed Tang Ao's lead and followed suit. Tang Ao was not the only one who was knowledgeable. Moreover, the reputation of the 6-star earth-shattering bear had spread far and wide. Even if they hadn't seen it before, they would at least have heard of it. Those who followed behind were no fools. When they saw Tang Ao's cultivation and he didn't even dare to fight, they still didn't know what to do. That expert from the Chiu family was directly stunned. Earlier he was still charging at full speed, but when he heard the roar, his footsteps involuntarily slowed down. When he saw the huge body of the brown bear, he was so scared that he stood rooted to the ground and didn't move at all. The speed of the frenzied 6-star earth-shattering bear was definitely not inferior to anyone present. This second-stage Realm Junior from the Chiyo family was stunned for a few seconds, and the earth-shattering bear had already rushed in front of him. Facing this desperate, hot-blooded expert from the Chiyo family, the earth-shattering bear didn't even waste a single bit of energy. It didn't stop at all, and just used its front paw to slap this expert into the ground. When the earth-shattering bear raised its paw, he was already half flat. Looking at the others who were fleeing in all directions, the earth-shattering bear once again roared towards the sky. It stood up on its hind legs and slammed its front paw heavily towards the ground. A formless shockwave spread out like a ripple. Everywhere it passed, the earth shook and the mountains shook as though there was an earthquake. A few experts who were fleeing were caught off guard, and the ground shook, and they directly fell flat on their faces. Everyone was shaken to the point that their eyes were shaking nonstop. Chapter 65. The reason why the earth-shattering bear was called the earth-shattering bear was because of the huge destructive power it had when it went berserk. This was also its innate ability. With a furious slap, the mountains within 100 feet radius would really collapse, as though there was an earthquake. Because this was a forest, the roots of the trees were more developed and had withstood many of the earth-shattering bear's wrath. If it was a city, it would have long been a mess. But even so, among the pursuers who fled in all directions, those who were slower were directly shaken on the spot. This was not only because of the shaking of the ground, but also because they were struck by the earth-shattering bear's attack. This slap of the earth-shattering bear was known as the earth-shattering strike by experts who understood it, which was also how it got its name. This strike contained a strong spiritual energy attack. The earth-shattering bear's spiritual energy traveled along the ground and within the attack range. Those with lower cultivation would directly faint. Even if they didn't faint directly, the strong vibration and spiritual energy attack would affect the balance of the living being and cause them to be unable to walk or stand up straight. Tang Ao and the rest escaped quickly, but there were at least 10 over people from various families who didn't escape the attack range and were directly smashed to the ground by the earth-shattering bear. They knew it was dangerous, but when they wanted to run, they realized that they couldn't control their limbs effectively. At most, they could only run for 2 steps before falling to the ground and were so dizzy that they couldn't get up. After that, this group of miserable wretches could only watch as the earth-shattering bear ran towards them and viciously smashed down on their heads. The last sound they could make was a terrified scream. Tang Ao and the rest who had already escaped heard the screams of their companions, but at this moment, the only thought in their minds was to run as far as possible. The strength of the 6-star earth-shattering bear was not something that a few 5th-stage realm experts could handle. Even if everyone present joined forces, it wouldn't be enough. Don't think that people could find 7-star or even 8-star original spirits through soul refiners. Original spirits were formed after these powerful demonic beasts died. Original spirits wouldn't stay in their original habitat and would randomly drift around, which was why they could be captured by soul refiners. Original spirits were easy to deal with because original spirits didn't have any offensive capabilities. But a living 6-star earth-rending bear was at least in the middle of the 6th-degree realm. It was not something that a dozen of 5th-degree realm experts could hope to kill. Not to mention killing them, it would already be a miracle if he could guarantee that he wouldn't die. They had only entered the grounds of Thousand Extremities for a short distance, at most 30 miles, and they had actually encountered a 6-star earth-splitting bear. No wonder 9 out of 10 seniors who had entered the grounds of Thousand Extremities were unable to come out. Encountering such a powerful demonic beast, the chances of those below the 6th-degree realm coming out alive were very slim. In fact, Wang Sheng did not run too far. Even the earth-shattering bear slap had affected Wang Sheng. However, Wang Sheng knew his limits. From the moment he entered the toilet, Wang Sheng had been lying on the ground. The slap had indeed caused Wang Sheng to feel dizzy for a long time. But to Wang Sheng, who didn't move, run, or stand, it didn't affect him too much. To Wang Sheng, it was just a period of discomfort. As long as he didn't move, he could easily endure it. The six-star earth-shattering bear was very sensitive. From the moment Wang Sheng sat there, it had discovered it. At that time, it had just eaten its fill and didn't want to move. Even now, the earth-shattering bear was still able to discover the place where Wang Sheng was hiding. He was also the only living person within its attack range. However, the place where Wang Sheng was lying was very ingenious. It was the earth-shattering bear's toilet. Wang Sheng's body was practically covered in the earth-shattering bear's feces. Instinctively, the earth-shattering bear would reject that place. Previously, Wang Sheng had been very sneaky. He had immediately fled after shooting an arrow, but the direction of the arrow had been in a straight line with the Qiu family expert. When Wang Sheng had shamelessly crawled into the earth-shattering bear's toilet, the arrow had naturally been shot by that Qiu family junior. After eating and drinking its fill, the earth-shattering bear had been enraged. After killing so many ants who had angered it, the earth-shattering bear was no longer as angry. As such, the earth-shattering bear didn't pursue the little fellow who had never provoked it, was weak, and didn't pose a threat to it at all. After swallowing a mouthful of food that had just been softened, the earth-shattering bear's stomach became even fuller. It was better to go back to sleep. Without even looking at Wang Sheng, the earth-shattering bear twisted its huge body. When it passed by a tree, it even rubbed itself against it in satisfaction. Only then did it return to its comfortable nest and lie down to take a nap. As for the little fellow lying in its own feces, it could do whatever it wanted. Smacking it to death would only dirty its claws. Eat it. Don't even think about it. To Wang Sheng, crawling in a demonic beast feces was no big deal at all. He had experienced this more than once when he was training on Earth. There was even one time when he was out on a mission. Wang Sheng had stayed in a cesspool for a day and night, evading the search of several waves of police dogs and guards before killing off the mission target with one shot. There was no psychological burden at all. By the time Wang Sheng recovered from his dizziness, the earth-shattering bear was already snoring loudly. Wang Sheng's cultivation was low, so after being smacked by the earth-shattering bear, it took him more than 10 minutes to fully recover. However, during this period of time, none of the pursuers behind him dared to rush over. The roar of the earth-shattering bear was simply too terrifying, to the point that it was hard to say whether or not the pursuers had gathered together. Wang Sheng carefully retreated from the other side of the earth-shattering bear's toilet, then sped up and left. When it was slightly safer, he found a small stream and washed himself clean. Relying on the compass on his watch to determine the direction, Wang Sheng continued to walk towards the depths of the grounds of Thousand Despair. Although the pursuers were shocked by the earth-shattering bear, they definitely wouldn't let him go so easily. The pursuers would definitely surround him from all directions, so the safest choice right now was to go deeper into the grounds of Thousand Despair. With the warning of the little person with combat awareness, it was definitely much easier for Wang Sheng to deal with the demonic beasts in the grounds of Thousand Despair than thousands of enemies outside. After walking for a short while, Wang Sheng discovered that the pursuers were once again following him. This time, Tang Ao and the others had learned their lesson from the earth-shattering bear, so they were even more cautious. After escaping, they realized that the earth-shattering bear wasn't chasing them, so they slowly gathered together again. After carefully bypassing the earth-shattering bear's territory, it didn't take long before they discovered the traces that Wang Sheng had left behind, and once again carefully chased after him. They had no choice but to chase after him. Whether it was for the sake of their clan or their personal reputation, they wouldn't allow them to give up when even a lowly barbarian like Wang Sheng could easily enter the deeper parts of the grounds of Thousand Despair. If they failed, the punishment they would face would definitely not be any easier than dying under the earth-shattering bear's claws. Chapter 66. Wang Sheng welcomed those who chased after him, but he was afraid that they wouldn't chase after him. If a demonic beast at the edge of the grounds of Thousand Despair could scare them off, no matter if it was them or their families, they would never be able to raise their heads high when they returned. Tang Ao was already regretting his decision. If he knew that Wang Sheng was so difficult to deal with, why would he snatch this mission? With his fifth-degree realm cultivation, he brought a group of people to deal with a lowly barbarian. If he succeeded, people would say that he was bullying the weak. If he failed, his reputation would be tarnished. So why bother? But now that he had boarded the pirate ship, he could only brace himself and walk on this path till the end. If Wang Sheng didn't turn back, they would have to follow him into the depths of the grounds of Thousand Despair. The other two fifth-degree realm experts from the Song and Sure families had the same thoughts as Tang Ao. If they knew this would happen, they wouldn't have come. As long as they didn't provoke Wang Sheng, why would he use his weapon to deal with them? The families had nothing better to do, especially that expert from the Song family. Their eldest young miss and Wang Sheng were friends, so why did they have to interfere in this matter? After this incident, they didn't dare to casually rush out when Wang Sheng was resting. Following Wang Sheng's footsteps, they entered about 40 to 50 miles into the grounds of Thousand Despair, and some thoughts started to form in their minds. Following Wang Sheng, as long as they followed Wang Sheng's footsteps, they didn't meet with any danger or trouble. The legendary powerful demonic beast was only seen once, the 6-star earth-rending bear, as if the other demonic beast had disappeared. That was to say, either Wang Sheng knew the distribution of the demonic beasts in the grounds of Thousand Despair, or he had a unique way to discover the demonic beasts in advance. No matter which of these two theories was, it would make any aristocratic family excited. What kind of place was the grounds of Thousand Despair? It was a land of death, a land of despair. But why would there be experts rushing in tirelessly to die? That was because there were unimaginable treasures in the grounds of Thousand Despair. As for what it was, no one knew. The ancestors of each family had left behind a rumor. However, there was one thing that was true. If they could really find a way to enter the grounds of Thousand Despair, all the aristocratic families would be willing to exchange their entire fortune for it. Wang Sheng stopped once again. This time he wasn't resting. Instead, he suddenly assumed a defensive posture. This action made the experts who were following far behind all startled. What had happened? The warning from the battle consciousness minion was getting stronger and stronger. Although Wang Sheng didn't move, the feeling he got was getting more and more terrifying. This could only mean one thing, and that was that danger was approaching. What was the danger? He did not know. Perhaps it was a ferocious and hungry demon beast, or perhaps it was a group of seemingly harmless insects. No one would know until they saw it. The only thing Wang Sheng could be sure of was that the danger was definitely fatal, and it was approaching. Wang Sheng only hesitated for a moment before he heard the faint sound of flowing water. At first, the voice was very weak, but didn't take long for it to become clear. How could this be? How could there be water here? Wang Sheng lowered his head and looked at the ground. It was clearly a normal jungle. The vegetation was dense, and the undergrowth was also very normal. There are no signs of water flowing here. So where did the sound of flowing water come from? If this was a place that was frequently flooded, the ground wouldn't be so normal. At the very least, there would be some traces of water flowing, and the surrounding vegetation should also have obvious traces. However, there was nothing here. It was very abnormal. Wang Sheng frowned and listened for a while. Suddenly, a possibility flashed through his mind. Oh no! Wang Sheng was shocked. Without saying anything, he found a tree that was thick enough to support his weight and had enough water. He quickly climbed up the tree. The people behind didn't know what Wang Sheng was doing. Seeing him suddenly climb the tree, they thought that Wang Sheng wanted to take the opportunity to get out of their sight. A few impatient people rushed forward a few steps, wanting to see what Wang Sheng was going to do. Fortunately, Wang Sheng just climbed to the middle of the trunk and didn't climb any further. Instead, he found a linen robe out of nowhere, began to tear it into strips, and then wrapped it around the trunk. He wrapped it around every few dozen centimeters, and it was getting higher and higher. No one knew what he was going to do. At this time, the faint sound of flowing water also reached the ears of the tracking experts. Everyone looked at each other. This was a mountainous jungle. Where did the water come from? A flash flood? Not to mention that the weather was sunny and there was no water channel at all. There was no trace of water flow around in the past. How could a flash flood suddenly break out? Not everyone could see Wang Sheng's movements clearly. Most people only knew that Wang Sheng climbed up a tree. What kind of situation was Wang Sheng climbing up the tree? Could it be that Wang Sheng really thought that a flood was coming, so he climbed to a high place? The more they thought about it, the more likely it was. Among the trackers, there were already a dozen younger people who were not shrewd enough and laughed. This Wang Sheng didn't have any common sense at all. There was no water at all. Why would he climb so high? Even if there was water, the sound was only at the level of a small stream. Moreover, it was the kind of stream that wouldn't submerge one's ankles. This little bit of water scared Wang Sheng to the point of climbing up the tree. But what was the meaning of the roar of the demon beast in the sound of the water? Wang Sheng, who was on the tree, didn't care what the experts behind him were thinking. After continuously wrapping several rounds of linen cloth, he slowly slid to the place where the first round of linen cloth was and began to smear oil on the linen cloth. This oil was not vegetable oil but animal oil. To be more precise, it was the fat of the 1,000 illusion poisonous centipede. It was left behind after Wang Sheng finished eating the meat. This fat was slightly fishy when used for cooking, but Wang Sheng accidentally discovered that this fat was an excellent fuel during the barbecue process. During the barbecue process, a few drops of melted fat were dripped into the fire, and the fire burned for a long time. It was the most suitable thing to start a fire. After smearing the first round of linen cloth with oil, Wang Sheng used the rope he purchased in Upper Forest City to make a safety rope. He fastened himself to the tree to ensure that even if something went wrong, he wouldn't fall down. Then, he used the Tiger Fong army knife to peel off the bark on top of the linen cloth. Only then did he look down at the ground. The sound of the water was getting louder and louder. La 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 la. It was as if there was really a small stream flowing here. The roar of the demon beast was also getting louder and louder, and a bigger movement was also coming. Tang Ao had never underestimated Wang Sheng, but he was still very puzzled by Wang Sheng's actions. At this time, when he heard this, he suddenly seemed to think of something terrible, and his face revealed an incomparably horrified expression. Without waiting for Tang Ao to give any warning, a loud bang sounded, and the sound in that direction suddenly became clear. Then, dozens of demon beasts suddenly rushed into everyone's field of vision. The dozen experts who rushed in front bore the brunt of the impact and directly blocked the path of the dozens of demon beasts. Chapter 67. Seeing these demonic beasts charging over, whether it was the 10 over people in front or the experts behind, all of their faces turned pale. Berserk tiger, shadow leopard, swift-wind fox, savage giant python. Even the weakest 5-star berserk tiger looked immature, but it had the power of a 4th-degree realm peak. Any one of these demonic beasts could easily eliminate the 3 strongest 5th-degree realm experts among the pursuers one-on-one. Not to mention the number of demonic beasts that were charging over at such a high speed. Even if there were thousands of men and horses in front of them, they would probably be able to charge through a few holes. The faces of the 10 over people at the front turned green. With so many demonic beasts charging over, Wang Sheng, that barbarian, only wanted to climb up a tree. How stupid did he have to be to do such a stupid thing? Did he think that by climbing up a tree, he would be able to avoid the attacks of these demonic beasts? However, it was already too late to blame Wang Sheng. The Yao beasts were only a few dozen meters away from crashing into them. The group of cultivators scrambled to the side. Quite a number of them were quite astute as they hid behind large trees. At least with a big tree in front of them, they would be able to hide themselves and withstand the impact. Bam, bam, bam. A few experts who could not dodge in time were directly hit by the demonic beasts. Facing a demonic beast that was at least 5 meters long and 2 to 3 tons in weight, those few humans who only weighed a few hundred kilograms were not even worth mentioning. They were all sent flying. 5 of them were knocked to death on the spot. 2 of them were not sent flying, but were directly trampled under their feet. One of the unlucky fellows even had his head jumped on by the shadow leopard, and a huge force pressed his head into his chest. The remaining ones were considered lucky and did not die. but many of their bones were broken. They flew high up and fell heavily to the ground, unable to move. Only 5 to 6 smart people who saw that the situation was not good and hid behind a big tree were able to escape this calamity. Those demonic beasts ignored these delicious delicacies and did not even look at them. They just kept on rushing forward. Those who were lucky enough to survive, whether they were injured or not, all of them heaved a sigh of relief. Luckily, these demonic beasts did not bother about them. Otherwise, they would have died without a burial ground. The experts at the back had already made their preparations and avoided the path of the demonic beasts. There were some who couldn't dodge in time, but when they saw that their companions could survive by hiding behind the trees, they followed suit. At this moment, no one laughed at Wang Sheng for climbing up a tree. It seemed like that was the correct way to deal with the demonic beasts. Didn't everyone rely on hiding behind the trees to avoid being hit by the demonic beasts? But there was no need to climb a tree, right? The smart ones immediately thought of something. Why did Wang Sheng climb up the tree? If he could just hide behind the tree, why did he have to climb up the tree? Why did he have to spend so much effort on the tree trunk? Not good. Someone immediately reacted. Why were those demonic beasts attacking them so recklessly? That was not an attack at all, but an escape. None of the demonic beasts looked at them. Nonsense. Who would care about anything else when they were running for their lives? What was it that could make so many ferocious demon beasts flee? Before they could figure out, the sound of flowing water became clearer, as if it was right beside them. Wang Sheng had already prepared everything on the tree, waiting for the moment of crisis to arrive. Seeing so many demonic beasts frantically fleeing, Wang Sheng understood that the main character was coming. Lowering his head, Wang Sheng opened his eyes wide and looked at the ground. At this time, Wang Sheng's vision, which had been strengthened twice, played an important role. The light in the forest was inevitably a little dim, but Wang Sheng could still see clearly. From the direction of the sound of flowing water, there was a black and red tide flowing over. It was really like a tide. Everywhere it passed, whether it was the ground, rocks, or tree trunks, they were all submerged by the tide and dyed a terrifying black and red color. Sure enough, Wang Sheng looked at the black and red tide and muttered as he expected. Wang Sheng had seen such a scene on Earth. Once when he was on a mission in the Amazon rainforest, he saw a similar scene. However, the scene on Earth was simply child's play compared to the one in front of him. The Amazon army ants were also known as army ants. There were 1 to 2 million of them in a colony, and they often swept through the forest in a marching army of 15 to 20 meters wide. Everywhere they passed, other than some plants, almost all living things would be torn apart. In the past, Wang Sheng had personally witnessed a monkey fall into a swarm of ants. In less than 2 minutes, the monkey had turned into a pile of bones. When the army ants moved, there would be a sound like flowing water, no different from the sound in front of him. However, the colony under the tree was obviously more than 1 to 2 million, and the range of distribution was not 15 to 20 meters wide. At least, when Wang Sheng looked from left to right, he could not see the edge of the colony, nor could he see the tail of the colony. He did not know what these black and red ants were called in this world, but it was obvious that they were much more terrifying than those on Earth. An ant looked like it was 3 centimeters long, several times larger than those on Earth. Its huge front jaw was 1 centimeter long, and one could tell at a glance that it was a killer. In the blink of an eye, the black and red tide flowed under the tree where Wang Sheng was hiding. At this time, Wang Sheng did not say anything and directly ignited the circle of oiled linen strips. The raging flame immediately burned. The flame had just appeared, and the bottom of the cloth on the tree trunk was already covered with black and red. Countless ants climbed up the tree trunk, but were blocked by the burning cloth and could not move forward. A few foolish and bold ants tried a few times and rushed into the fire. Their whole bodies were ignited and fell under the tree. After that, no ants rushed into the fire. Wang Sheng endured the burning of the oiled linen strips and carefully prepared for the next circle. He peeled off a part of the bark. The tree contained enough water, and this circle of linen strips would not ignite the tree itself. Although it was uncomfortable to be roasted below, it was better than falling into a pile of ants. It's the man-eating ants. From the direction where Wang Sheng walked over, there were already horrifying screams, mixed with a few shrill screams, which made one's hair stand on end. The few pitiful fellows who could not move after being knocked by those fleeing demonic beasts were instantly drowned by the swarm of ants. The huge ants frantically tore off their flesh from their bodies. That feeling was simply like being minced alive. A few black and red human-shaped bumps rose on the ground, and in less than 10 seconds, they collapsed. The screams only lasted for 2 to 3 times before they disappeared. The swarm of ants seemed to have encountered nothing and continued to move forward. Occasionally, a few white bones would be exposed in the black and red tide, which looked very fresh. From the moment someone shouted out the word man-eating ants, the pursuers behind were no longer organized and without a team. Everyone, no matter if it was the 5th stage realm Tang Ao and the rest, or those followers who weren't as good as them, all of them scattered and ran for their lives. Chapter 68. Wang Sheng could not care less about the life or death of the people behind him. His eyes were fixed on the tree he was hiding in. He had already retreated to the second ring of linen and was quickly smearing oil on it. Bang! A loud sound came from not far away, attracting Wang Sheng's attention. When he turned around, Wang Sheng saw a horrifying scene. A giant desolate python was too big and slow to outrun the man-eating ant army, so it could only hide in a huge tree. The tree was a few meters thick, enough to support the giant desolate python's tens of meters long body. However, the tree had been completely occupied by the man-eating ant army, and the whole tree had turned black and red. The loud sound just now was the sound of the giant desolate python falling from the tree to the ground. The savage giant python, which weighed several tons, fell from a tree that was tens of meters high. God knew how many man-eating ants it crushed to death, but its body was still covered in black and red. There was a continuous gnawing sound, which made people feel itchy from the bones. Separated by more than 200 meters, Wang Sheng could see clearly that the nearly 40 meters long giant python rolled on the ground for more than a dozen rounds. Its body twitched dozens of times, and then it stopped moving. Black and red waves rolled and wriggled, accompanied by the sound of tearing and gnawing. Seeing that the giant serpent was about to turn into a pile of bones, the man-eating ant army didn't hesitate at all and continued to surge forward crazily. What was the saying, ant can bite an elephant to death? Not far away from him was a living example. In terms of strength, Wang Sheng believed that every ant could not compete with an ordinary person. At most, they could only have the strength of an ordinary person. However, whether it was the berserk tiger, the shadow leopard, or the giant desolate python in front of him, they were demonic beasts with the strength of the peak of the 4th degree realm. If they could not escape, they would become a pile of bones like the giant python in front of them. Perhaps the giant desolate python had killed no less than tens of thousands of man-eating ants, but so what? It had almost no effect on this tide-like colony of man-eating ants. That scene left a deep impression on Wang Sheng, as if it was engraved in his mind. Suddenly a light flashed in Wang Sheng's mind. Why did the cheek his spirit beast open its mouth wide and swallow those boulders? Wouldn't it be easier to learn from the ants and rely on their numbers to create an invincible aura? Of course, this was just a flash of inspiration. Wang Sheng didn't dare to think too much about it. The first ring of sackcloth was almost done burning, and the flames gradually died down. Wang Sheng lit up the second ring without hesitation. A circle of linen cloth and grease could only burn for less than 3 minutes. He didn't know if the rest would be enough to last against the overwhelming army of man-eating ants. At this moment, other than the sound of flowing water, Wang Sheng could hear nothing else. Wang Sheng believed that at least within 100 meters of himself, there definitely wouldn't be any other living creatures that could make a sound. Wherever the man-eating ant army went, it would only bring death. There wouldn't be anything else. The sound of flowing water was simply the most terrifying killing sound, and it was also the most efficient and comprehensive one. What Wang Sheng was looking forward to the most was that the grease and cloth on his body would be able to last through the march of the man-eating ant army. As for the experts chasing him, Wang Sheng didn't even think about it. Seeing that the second ring was about to burn, Wang Sheng had already retreated to the third ring. Once the second ring of fire weakened, he would immediately light the third ring. The process of waiting was simply torturous. No one knew how many man-eating ants there were or how long they could last. Even Wang Sheng was barely holding on. The little person with battle awareness was constantly warning him. The source spirit space was constantly shaking. It almost made Wang Sheng dizzy and let go. Fortunately, he had prepared a safety rope beforehand, so he wouldn't drop it even if he accidentally let go. After burning 7 or 8 rings, it had almost been 20 minutes. Wang Sheng finally saw the edge of the ant army. Seeing that he still had 3 rings of linen on his side, Wang Sheng finally let out a long sigh of relief. He could hold on until the end. After igniting the next ring of linen, Wang Sheng began to look around. After passing through the man-eating ant army, there was nothing left in the surroundings. Wang Sheng couldn't hear any sounds other than the march of the man-eating ants. However, the black-gray smoke in the distance still made Wang Sheng vigilant. He wasn't the only smart person. There were also experts among the pursuers. The black-gray smoke that seemed to be a kilometer away was clearly a phenomenon of burning wet wood. Someone must have used a similar method to block the man-eating ant army. Wang Sheng's guess was right. There were more than 20 people gathered in a large burning circle with a circumference of 10 feet. At this moment, these people were crazily chopping down the only slightly withered tree in the circle. As long as they chopped down some firewood, someone would quickly send the firewood to the place where the fire was weaker. Not to mention chopping wood, they couldn't even bear to cut meat. At this moment, no one cared if it would break or not. They were simply using it as firewood chopping knives. As for chopping firewood, which was something only lowly people would do, the experts who were usually high and mighty did not show any signs of disdain, nor did they slack off. Everyone was afraid that if they chopped any slower, the man-eating ants would break through and devour them until not a single one was left. There were a few experts patrolling the edge of the circle. Once they discovered 1 or 2 fish that escaped the fire circle, they would immediately stab them. This matter concerned everyone's life and death. No one dared to hide anything at this time. Those who were in charge of clearing the ants were the few with the highest cultivation. Among them were Tang Ao and the 2 5th-stage realm experts from the Song family and Shi family, while the rest were all in the 4th-stage realm. Under the protection of the few of them, the Ring of Fire managed to hold on until the end without any mishap. Tang Ao heaved a sigh of relief when he saw the edge of the ant colony. He had learnt this trick of using the fire circle from Wang Sheng, and he didn't expect it to be so useful, allowing everyone to last till the end. The minute the ant colony appeared, everyone saw the danger. Those fellows who escaped in all directions didn't care. At least Tang Ao and the other experts knew that they had to work together to tide over this crisis. So each of them brought their 10 over-companions to gather at one spot, and according to the fire attack method that Tang Ao saw Wang Sheng used, they managed to save their lives. However, that was all. Out of the 100 over people, there were probably only 20 over of them left. The rest had already disappeared without a trace, not knowing where they had gone to. Actually, everyone just didn't say it out loud. Who didn't know what was going on? Where else could those fellows escape to? Under the encirclement of such a ferocious man-eating ant army, other than dying in the ant's stomach, what other possibility was there? Chapter 69. Finally, they managed to hang on till the ants had passed, and when they could no longer see the black and red figures, they heaved a sigh of relief and sat down on the ground without a care for their image. In just a short span of 20 over minutes, any one of them would be able to fight against an evenly matched opponent for such a long time without feeling weak. But now, they had obviously not engaged in a life-and-death battle with anyone, but it seemed as though they had exhausted all their energy. There had never been a battle which made them feel so exhausted, and similarly, there had never been a battle which made them feel as though they were lucky to escape. Now, they finally felt it. Other than the crackling sound of the burning flames, The 20 over people could only hear their heavy panting. All of them had just escaped from death, and no one had the mood to talk at this moment. After relaxing, everyone took out their food and water and started to eat. At this moment, they had to replenish their energy as soon as possible, otherwise they would not be able to deal with any danger. Everyone had finally experienced the dangers of the grounds of Thousand Despair. How deep had they gone? 50 miles? 60 miles? Less than 100 miles, and more than half of the pursuers had died. If they were to go deeper, who knew what kind of danger they would meet? At this moment, a question naturally appeared in everyone's mind. If Wang Sheng still wanted to go deeper, should they follow him or not? Should we still chase after him? Finally, someone asked this question timidly. The person who spoke was a third-degree realm expert from the Sher family. But at this moment, he did not have the arrogance and vigor of a third-degree realm expert at all. He looked as though he was a young wife who had been mistreated, that helpless and that cautious. Following this question, everyone's gazes were focused on the 3 fifth-degree realm experts from the Tang, Song, and Sher family. They were also the 3 pillars of support for all of them. The 2 experts from the Song and Sher family did not say a word as they looked at the burning wood, as though they were daydreaming. Only Tang Ao coughed lightly and attracted everyone's attention, including the 2 experts from the Song and Sher family. Don't chase. Tang Ao only said these 2 words and saw the joy on some of their faces. Tang Ao sighed in his heart and continued. What should we do if we don't chase after him? Turn around and chase after the ants? The word ant colony seemed to have become a taboo in everyone's hearts. Upon hearing this word, everyone couldn't help but look in the direction where the ant colony had disappeared, afraid that they would suddenly appear again. When they didn't see the black and red tide, everyone calmed down. However, Tang Ao's words made everyone fall into silence. The direction in which the swarm of ants had disappeared was the way they had come. If they wanted to go back the way they came, they would have to go in that direction. Who would dare? They had just escaped from death. Even if they were given 10,000 guts, they wouldn't dare to experience that terrifying scene again. Switch to another direction? No one would ask this question. All of them were experts. After tracking for such a long time and experiencing the 6-star earth-shattering bear and the man-eating ants, who wouldn't know that it was Wang Sheng's credit that they were able to get here? If they were allowed to explore the grounds of despair on their own, it would be impossible for them to reach this place. According to the strength of the 6-star earth-shattering bear, any random demonic beast in the periphery would be enough to wipe them out. If they went in another direction, who knew what they would encounter? If they followed Wang Sheng, everyone would be smarter and have better eyesight. Perhaps they would be able to discover any danger in advance and deal with it in advance. If they didn't follow him, no one would know what would happen. Looking at the current situation, it seemed that they had no choice but to follow him. Although Tang Ao's words were helpless, it was also the truth. Everyone braced themselves and quickly recovered their strength. If they couldn't even catch up with Wang Sheng, it would be troublesome. While the people who were tracking them were resting, Wang Sheng had already set foot on the road. On Earth, wherever the army ants went, there would be no living things left behind. However, after passing through, it would be a very suitable place for animals to live. All kinds of parasites on the trees and plants would be eaten, leaving behind a large amount of excrement and residue that couldn't be chewed. All of these were good fertilizers. Plants would first be full of vitality, and naturally, it would lead to a better living environment for animals. Thinking about it, the man-eating ants also had the same principle. Therefore, in a short period of time, there wouldn't be any strong demonic beasts in front of them because of the passage of the man-eating ants. However, after a long time, it would be hard to say. If they didn't take advantage of this time to rush forward, they would have missed the best opportunity. Wang Sheng slid down the tree as fast as he could, and then quickly rushed forward at the speed of a marching army. The combat consciousness minion really didn't warn him again, proving that Wang Sheng's deduction was completely correct. After the carpet cleaning of the man-eating ants, there's almost no strong demonic beasts in this direction, not even ordinary demonic beasts. It could be said that the road was smooth. From the beginning to the end, Wang Sheng didn't seem to panic. The strong psychological quality of an ace sniper allowed him to remain calm. There was a time on Earth when a snake passed by Wang Sheng's face and body, but Wang Sheng didn't panic and remained motionless like stone. This strong psychological quality was enough to make Tang Ao and the others, who were following behind him, feel ashamed. Unfortunately, Tang Ao and the others didn't know what their rest meant. Although it was necessary to restore their physical strength, they would have to face even more terrifying things. There are gains and losses, and even if you gain physical strength, you're bound to lose something. After marching for half an hour, Wang Sheng finally saw the first demonic beast. Wang Sheng was lucky. It was a herbivore, and it looked similar to the wildebeest in the African grassland on Earth, but its size was at least 3 times bigger. The Land of Thousand Despair didn't only have powerful demonic beasts, it also had a complete biosphere. With the existence of a complete food chain, those powerful demonic beasts could survive. These herbivores were the food of those powerful demonic beasts. In front of them was a wide river, 200 meters wide, and it was unknown how deep it was. The flow of the river was not very fast, and it looked very smooth. There were many black and red corpses of man-eating ants floating on the water, and from time to time, they were swallowed by the fish in the water and disappeared. Seeing this, Wang Sheng knew that the man-eating ants had come from this direction. Furthermore, they had crossed the river to get here. The corpses of the man-eating ants were proof. There was more than one huge wildebeest, demonic beast. At least 3 of them were swinging their tails and drinking water by the river. It seemed that they had noticed the arrival of Wang Sheng from a distance, but the wildebeest demonic beast just looked up at Wang Sheng and felt that Wang Sheng was a small thing that posed no threat, so it ignored him and just lowered its head to drink water. Wang Sheng didn't care about the wildebeest demonic beast that was 100 meters away. He ran to the river, took out a telescope, and looked at the opposite side. Chapter 70. The other side of the river was also a quiet scene. Wang Sheng guessed that it must have been the result of the man-eating ants attacking the river. He just didn't know if there would be great danger in the river. While thinking, Wang Sheng suddenly saw a scene through the binoculars. On the other side of the river, there was an animal about the same size as the wildebeest demon beast that was drinking water. It stepped on the ground and fell into the river. Just as the demon beast was about to walk back to the shore, the water suddenly began to churn, as if a pot had been opened and the water suddenly began to boil. Countless palm-sized fish jumped on the water, opened their big mouths that were half the size of a human's body, and crazily pounced on the body of the demon beast. In the blink of an eye, the water turned blood red. The huge demon beast only struggled a few times in the water, then sank into the water and never got up again. This scene made Wang Sheng's hair stand on end. While he was horrified, he also realized that a good opportunity had arrived. Shua, an M200 sniper rifle appeared in Wang Sheng's hand. Lifting the muzzle, Wang Sheng aimed the sniper rifle at the wildebeest demon beast that was drinking water more than 100 meters downstream. Bang! A shot hit the eyes of the first wildebeest demon beast. The body of the wildebeest demon beast went soft and directly fell into the river. Bang! Another shot. This time Wang Sheng hit the second wildebeest demon beast. This time, the wildebeest demon beast did not completely fall into the river. Instead, half of it was on the shore and the other half was in the water. The 2 gunshots were like the brightest torch in the night, guiding Tang Ao and the others who were chasing behind. When everyone heard the gunshots, their spirit was lifted and they quickly chased in this direction. Tang Ao and the others rested for about 10 minutes. By the time they reacted, Wang Sheng had already left. They had no choice but to follow the traces left by Wang Sheng. If they let Wang Sheng escape from their tracking range, in this place of despair, they would really fall into a dead end. Tracking marks were slow, after all. Now that he heard gunshots, it meant that Wang Sheng was in that direction. Everyone had heard of this sound before. It was said that when 4th Master Dai died, he had heard a very loud sound. Most likely, it was the divine weapon in Wang Sheng's hands. In front of them, Wang Sheng had actually used such a divine weapon. Moreover, he had used it twice at once. This meant that he had encountered a powerful demonic beast. To be able to cause a fourth-stage realm peak fourth Master Dai's head to explode from a distance, it should be able to settle the demonic beasts which appeared in the areas which had been cleansed by man-eating ants. And the only problem was they could not let Wang Sheng run too far away. Everyone began to chase frantically. Their speed was at the maximum, and the team gradually pulled apart. Since the area was so clean along the way, they had already thought of the cleaning effect of man-eating ants. Therefore, they let go of their pace and were not afraid of the appearance of fierce demonic beasts. The place where the wildebeest demon beast fell into the water had already begun to boil. Even the wildebeest that was still in the water was the same. Countless small fishes revealed their sharp teeth and crazily fought for food in the water. That kind of cruel scene was enough to make a soft-hearted person have countless nightmares. However, Wang Sheng quickly retracted his sniper rifle. Then, when he saw the commotion, he jumped into the water without a second thought. It was as though he did not care about those terrifying piranhas at all. This was not Wang Sheng being arrogant, but a judgment based on scientific wilderness survival skills. In the waters of a river, the existence at the top of the food chain was limited. It was impossible to grow without limit. These frightening piranhas were obviously the top existences in this area of the water. Just like the man-eating ants, although their individual strength did not exceed the middle of the first stage realm. But when there were a lot of them, they would swarm together and become the overlord of the water. This terrifying hunting method of the man-eating fishes also limited their numbers. There was a huge demonic beast on the opposite bank, and 2 wildebeest demon beasts here. The food was enough for a group of man-eating fishes to hunt for a short period of time, especially since there was a strong smell of blood on both sides. Almost all the man-eating fishes would be attracted. Choosing to enter the water at this time was the safest time for Wang Sheng to forcefully swim across the river. Because there was blood to attract the demonic beast downstream, Wang Sheng did not have any wounds on his body, so he did not bleed and did not emit the smell of blood. Only at this time could Wang Sheng cross the river. However, the only requirements were timing and speed. Both were indispensable. In terms of timing, Wang Sheng was able to grasp the moment when the demonic beast fell into the water and killed the 2 demonic beasts in the shortest time possible, feeding the man-eating fishes with enough food. In terms of speed, Wang Sheng's physical fitness had greatly improved. In addition, his original source spirit was originally a carp, so his speed in the water was at least twice as fast as when he was on Earth. The 200-meter wide river, Wang Sheng only needed a little more than a minute to swim across. The world record for 200-meter freestyle on Earth was around 1 minute and 42 seconds. Wang Sheng's current speed was almost 60% faster than the world record. One must know that Wang Sheng was wearing big-toe boots and camouflage uniform to swim, which was totally different from swimming in the pool. Tang Ao and the rest chased after him quickly. Wang Sheng was also desperately paddling his arms in the water. Just as Wang Sheng expected, the 3 demonic beasts' bloody corpses were enough to attract all the man-eating fishes in the water. When Wang Sheng was swimming, he did not receive any attacks. 1 minute flew by. By the time Wang Sheng finally made it to the other side of the river, the fastest pursuer had already reached the riverside. Whether it was Tang Ao or the 2 fifth-stage realm experts from the Song and Sure family, they were not the fastest. The 3 of them were cautiously in the middle of the group, coordinating with their companions to ensure the safety of most of their companions. The 2 third-stage realm experts from the Sure family and Song family were at the forefront. When they saw Wang Sheng climbing to the shore and taking off his boots to pour water, they followed Wang Sheng and jumped into the water without any hesitation. Now Wang Sheng was everyone's hope. As long as they could control Wang Sheng, they might be able to find a way back. At this time, this area had just been cleaned by the man-eating ants, so it was impossible for Wang Sheng to make use of any strong demonic beasts. So everyone's thoughts were almost the same, which was to take advantage of this time to capture Wang Sheng. The 2 of them swam more than 10 meters away. The two Tang family members who were following behind then reached the shore. At the same time, there were a few more people chasing after them. Seeing the situation in front, these 5 to 6 people didn't say anything and jumped into the water and swam over. By the time Tang Ao and the rest reached the shore, the 8 people in front had already swum more than 10 meters away. The furthest person had already passed the middle and would be able to swim to the other side in a while. On the other side of the river, however, Wang Sheng was still calmly tidying up his boots. No! Tang Ao could tell that something was wrong with one look. But all he could do now was to shout out this sentence and stop the people behind from jumping into the water. That was all. Chapter 71. Tang Ao shouted this sentence, not because he had discovered something, but because he instinctively sensed that something was wrong. For a top exponent like Tang Ao, he had an innate premonition towards danger. Shurchong had the same thought. Shurchong was the 5th-degree realm expert from the Shur family. He also sensed something was wrong at the same time, but he couldn't tell what was wrong. Song Ming was the leader of the Song family. He was more cautious, and without a second word, he rushed to the riverside and looked around. Then he saw the wildebeest, demonic beast, which only had half of its body left on the riverside. This wildebeest, demonic beast looked like it had just died, and the corpse was still very fresh. Half of its body was still bleeding, and it couldn't be any fresher. But such a fresh corpse was actually split in half. It was imaginable how terrifying the thing in the water was. There's danger in the water. Song Ming's eyes tightened as he hurriedly shouted at those people in the water. At this time, Tang Ao and Shurchong also realized that something was wrong. The problem was that the nearest person in the water had already swum more than 30 meters away. Even if they turned around, it would take more than 10 seconds. Everything was too late. When Tang Ao, Shurchong, and Song Ming rushed over, it was already too late, and it was too late to warn their companions. Their companions in the river heard their words, but they didn't know what danger there was in the water, nor did they know how to prevent it. Suddenly, the calm river started to boil again. The boiling point was the position of the 8 companions in the river. This time, the people on the shore could clearly see that countless palm-sized fishes had suddenly appeared and were frantically tearing at the bodies of their companions in the water. Long screams were heard from their companions in the river. That was a sound that could only be made when they were at their limit. Spiritual Qi protection. Shurchong shouted at the people in the river, "Go to the nearest riverside." Shurchong could see that those fishes were at most 1st-degree realm, early-stage cultivation. Those companions in the river could be easily killed by any one of them. Unfortunately, they couldn't exert their strength in the water and could only try their best to move towards the riverside. Tang Ao and Song Ming were thinking about another problem. Since Wang Sheng was calmly tidying his shoes on the other side, it meant that he wasn't afraid that the pursuers in the water could reach the other side. What did this mean? It could only be said that Wang Sheng knew that the thing in the water would definitely be able to stop the people in the water from going ashore. In other words, his companions in the water were doomed. They were just curious as to how Wang Sheng had managed to get there. Logically speaking, looking at Wang Sheng's drenched body and the way he poured water out of his boots, he should have swum through the water. But why didn't the fish in the water attack Wang Sheng? Perhaps because they heard Shurchong's voice. The people in the water used their spiritual energy to protect themselves. Actually, even without Shurchong's reminder, they had already done so. But these piranhas in the water were not as simple as ordinary 1st-degree realm cultivators. It wasn't that the cultivation of the piranhas had broken through the sky, but that the big mouth of the piranhas, which took up half of its body, was completely evolved to bite its food. Every single tooth in his mouth was more powerful than an ordinary sharp blade when he bit down on something. If it was just an ordinary blade, these people wouldn't care. As long as they used their spiritual energy to protect themselves, ordinary sharp blades wouldn't even be able to cut through their skin. The trouble was if the piranhas swarmed over in thousands, it wouldn't be a matter of 1 or 2, but thousands or tens of thousands. Just as he defended his left hand, a sharp pain came from his right hand. His palm was bitten through, and a piece of flesh was torn off. His right hand was in pain. His legs, stomach, face, and back were all in pain. Under such circumstances, using spiritual energy to protect oneself was a joke. They wanted to jump up, but they could only struggle out of the water for a moment and immediately fell back into the water. They wanted to brandish their knives and swords to kill these piranhas, but after killing 4 or 5 of them, other places were attacked by tens and hundreds of times more piranhas. Fresh blood gushed out, and the 8 of them formed 8 whirlpools of blood in the water, accompanied by shrill cries. 8 balls of fish wriggled crazily. After a while, the cries became softer and softer, and finally there was no sound, leaving only the sound of those piranhas leaping out of the water towards their targets. They were all experts, and at this distance, they could see clearly what happened to their companions. Everyone felt a chill in their hearts. The piranhas devoured more of their companions, but these people didn't see it with their own eyes. At that time, they were desperately chopping firewood to stop the attack of the piranhas, so how could they care about others? But now, 8 of his companions were being torn apart by those palm-sized piranhas in front of his eyes, turning from a complete person into 8 clean skeletons without any shred of flesh on them in an instant. This scene could make a cowardly person collapse immediately. Tang Ao, Shi Chong, and Song Ming were still fine. At their level, it was impossible for some terrifying scene to make them collapse. But the 3 of them couldn't do anything about it. They could only stand on the shore and watch helplessly as their clansmen were devoured by the piranhas, unable to do anything. On the other side, Wang Sheng seemed to be looking at the scene in the water, and no one knew what Wang Sheng was thinking. But seeing his calm expression, Tang Ao, Shi Chong, and Song Ming gritted their teeth and chased after Wang Sheng. They must cut him into 1,000 pieces to vent the hatred in their hearts. Roar! An earth-shattering roar resounded from the right side of the crowd, and everyone was startled by this roar. Tang Ao and the others immediately turned to look in that direction, but they could only hear the roar, but couldn't see anything. Oh no! Song Ming suddenly thought of something and shouted. He jumped up like a rabbit that had been shot by an arrow. Quick! Quick! Quickly chop the trees to make rafts. Hurry up! It will be too late if we delay any longer. Everyone immediately reacted. Without waiting for Tang Ao and the others to urge them, everyone desperately rushed to the nearest tree, pulled out the weapons that were chopping firewood not long ago, and crazily chopped to the trees. Just now, the 2 gunshots from Wang Sheng not only attracted the experts who were tracking them, but also the ferocious demonic beasts in the vicinity. These demonic beasts that lived in the place of despair were more familiar with the habits of the piranhas than humans. Once the ant colony passed by, they would definitely come to occupy the territory. Hearing the provocation of the gunshots, it would be strange if those powerful fellows did not come over. Thinking of the ferocious 6-star, earth-splitting bear, berserk tiger, and shadow leopard, everyone felt as if there was a little person waving a whip in their heart, urging them to move faster. At this time, only the real safe place was the water. Although there were piranhas in the water, as long as they could make a raft, no matter how ferocious the piranhas were, they would not jump onto the raft, right? Chapter 72. When the pursuers in the water were swallowed by the piranhas, Wang Sheng had just finished tidying up his boots. Just as he was about to get up, he suddenly stopped, took out his binoculars, and carefully observed the scene in the water. Each piranha's mouth occupied half of its body, and there were thousands of them. Whether it was a huge wildebeest monster beast or an ordinary human master, they could not last more than half a minute under their attack. As long as they entered the water, unless they were monsters that lived in the water, they could only exert at most half of their strength, not to mention their speed. If they could exert 1/3 of their strength, they would be lucky. Once humans entered the water, they would basically be slaughtered, and it was unlikely that they would have any other result. What attracted Wang Sheng was not that he wanted to see the result of these people, but that he suddenly had an idea. He wanted to see if the piranha's swallowing process could be applied to the qi when swallowing. It must be known that the big mouth of the piranha occupied half of its body, and coincidentally, The big mouth of the Chi Wind's dragon head and fish body also occupied half of its body. It was impossible for the piranha to swallow a wildebeest monster beast in one bite. Even if it was a human shrunk many times, it was impossible to swallow in one bite. The body was originally so big, and the mouth was also so big. There was a limit to how big it could be, and it was impossible to swallow it in one bite. In the same way, the Chi Wind's body was only so big, and its mouth was open to the limit, and it was impossible to swallow it in one bite. Not to mention swallowing the biggest stone, even a medium-sized one was powerless. Wang Sheng's spirit seemed to have stopped growing after swallowing the small stone, and Wang Sheng himself did not know how to swallow the two hill-like boulders behind. Now seeing the piranha's eating method, he suddenly had an inspiration. Could the spirit also split into many small Chi Wan, and then tear the boulders like a piranha and swallow them one by one? In terms of the sharpness of the teeth, the Chi Winds were dragon teeth, which were many times stronger than the piranha. If the spirit could really split, not to mention the two hill-like boulders, even if they were as big as the earth, so what? This was just a thought that flashed through Wang Sheng's mind. Before Wang Sheng had time to think about the subsequent possibilities, he was awakened by that earth-shattering roar. What Tang Ao, Shi Chong, and Song Ming could think of, Wang Sheng naturally could as well. The gunshot must have alerted a powerful demonic beast, and it came over to occupy its territory. Wang Sheng had just packed up his boots. At this moment, he stood up and waved at the pursuers who were still desperately chopping wood to build rafts. He turned around and left, quickly disappearing into the jungle on the other side. Shi Chong and Song Ming both saw Wang Sheng waving his hand, but they had no other choice but to grit their teeth and endure it. If he was distracted, time would not wait for him. That ferocious demonic beast might appear at any moment. An expert was indeed an expert. In just a few minutes, at least 4 thick trees were cut in half. One must know that this was the ground of Thousand Despair. The trees here were much stronger than the ordinary trees outside by several times. Just a little more time, and the 4 trees would be cut down. Unfortunately, the beast's roar was getting nearer and nearer, and it was going to be too late. At this critical moment, Tang Ao, Shi Chong, and Song Ming, the 3 fifth-degree realm experts, could not care about anything else. They got everyone to move aside, and the 3 of them worked together to attack one of the big trees that was connected to the roots. Bang! 5th-degree realm experts were really 5th-degree realm experts. A big tree fell in response to the sound. The 3 of them could not be bothered to rest, and immediately rushed to the second tree. By the time they had cut down the 2 big trees, the beast's roar was already a few hundred meters away. Everyone could even hear the sound of a huge beast crashing through the trees that were blocking its way. "It's too late. Push it into the water," Tang Ao shouted. The remaining 10 over people did not dare to delay. They worked together and pushed the 2 big trees together with the huge tree crown into the water. Shi Chong and Song Ming stood on the branch where there was no fork and chopped frantically. How are they going to cut down these 2 big trees? They could only chop off the tree crown. Tang Ao was on the other side, trying to connect the 2 big tree trunks together. Prepare a few long tree trunks to use as punts. In the midst of the chaos, Tang Ao suddenly thought of an important question. Without oars and punts, how is the raft going to move? The 4 people who were left at the back immediately turned around and pounced towards the nearest slender tree. As long as the tree trunk was as thick as a fist, they could chop it in one slash. It was not too troublesome. Everyone's actions were swift. On one side, they chopped down the small tree, and on the other side, they turned around and fled towards the river. Even so, the last person was still a step too slow. He had just leaped up when he was suddenly grabbed by a huge hand that stretched out from the dark forest. The huge hand was so huge that it directly grabbed that adult. The top half of his body was exposed while the lower half of his body was grabbed, and he was unable to move at all. The expert who was grabbed was shocked. He waved the tree trunk and weapon and was about to stab the huge hand when another huge hand grabbed his upper body without any warning. Exerting strength with both hands, a third-degree realm expert was torn into two at the waist. By this time, Shi and Song Ming had already chopped off the crown of the trees. The two big trees were left with two bare tree trunks. Luckily, the tree trunks were long enough to float, and it was enough for the 10 of them to use. Tang Ao had already secured one end of the raft, so as long as he secured the other end, it would be a simple and crude raft. Everyone saw their companion being torn apart at the waist, but no one wanted to save him. There was no other reason. The owner of the two huge hands had already appeared. It was a forest giant ape. Earlier, it was crawling on all fours. Now that it stood up straight, it was about 6 to 7 feet tall. Just this size alone was enough to make one's heart turn cold. But its strength was even more hopeless. The forest giant ape was a 7-star demonic beast. No matter how weak this giant ape was, it had the strength of a 6th-degree realm expert. Originally, it was almost invincible. But behind it, a few more giant apes appeared one after another. It was obvious that this was a group of giant apes. Unless Tang Ao and the 10 of them were crazy, they would not think of not escaping to fight with these giant apes. Hold on, leave the shore, Shi shouted. A few fellows holding onto the pole quickly pushed the raft away from the shore and into the water. Kacha! The giant ape bit off half of the body in its hand and chewed it in big mouthfuls. At the same time, it passed the rest of the body to a female ape behind it and rushed towards the shore. It must have found some delicious food. Everyone was shocked and frantically pushed the incomplete raft towards the middle of the river. Finally, when the giant ape reached the riverside, it pushed a distance and was considered to be barely safe. The giant ape probably knew that there were piranhas in the water, and it was not to be trifled with. It furiously beat its chest and roared towards the sky. Just when everyone thought that the giant ape was at his wit's end and that they were finally safe, the giant ape suddenly picked up a boulder from the riverside. Swinging its thick arm, it threw the boulder at the raft. Chapter 73. There was no doubt that the giant forest ape was a Hercules. The large rock that was thrown out with all its might was accompanied by a whistling sound as it smashed towards the joint of the two tree trunks. Once it was hit by the rock, the crude and incomplete wooden raft would completely fall apart. It was very difficult to maintain balance on a piece of wood. If it rolled slightly, the people on it would fall into the water. Furthermore, they would have to face the piranhas in the water, which was simply a nightmare. At this time, Tang Ao, Shi and Song Ming had no choice but to use all their strength to deal with the rock. In a flash, the three of them exchanged glances and tacitly stepped on the wooden raft. The three of them directly leaped in the air to face the rock that was flying towards them. However, the wooden raft under their feet rapidly retreated a few feet under the combined force of the three of them. Ding, ding, ding. The weapons of the three of them stabbed into the rock at the same time. Using the recoil from the rock, the three of them quickly retreated and stood firmly on the wooden raft behind them. After being blocked by the three of them, the speed of the rock was greatly reduced. Before it could reach the wooden raft, it had already fallen into the water. Boom! A huge splash of water was produced. More than a dozen piranhas were sent flying into the air and pounced towards the people on the wooden raft. Apart from Tang Ao, Shi and Song Ming, the others were frantically trying to stabilize the bamboo raft. The sudden attack from the piranhas caught them off guard. Even though Tang Ao, Shi and Song Ming had already quickly brandished their swords and killed more than half of the piranhas, there were still two piranhas that pounced on their two companions and bit them. The bamboo raft that was originally on the water was already unstable. Just a moment ago, they were retreating rapidly. The two of them, who were trying to balance themselves, did not expect the piranhas to attack. When they were bitten, a burst of pain caused them to lose their balance. With two splashes, the two of them fell into the water. The moment they fell into the water, it was as if they had been given a big dish. Countless piranhas frantically pounced on them. One of them was lucky and happened to have a companion beside him. However, the moment he fell into the water, his companion grabbed his hair and pulled him out of the water. The other one was really unlucky. After falling into the water, he did not show his head again. The companion that was pulled onto the bamboo raft was screaming crazily. Everyone took a closer look and sucked in a breath of cold air. There was not a single piece of uninjured flesh on his leg, and even his chest and stomach were full of wounds. Blood flowed down his back like a small stream. He didn't notice it at first, but after a few people pressed him down, they realized that there was a half-foot-long wound on his stomach, and a section of his intestines was spilling out. In the lands of thousand despair, under such circumstances, even the best elixir wouldn't be able to save his companion's life. Chi! With a soft sound, Shi Chang's sword pierced through his companion's throat. Rather than letting him live like this and suffer, it was better to give him a quick death. Soon, everyone realized that there was a new problem. This comrade's blood continued to flow into the river, causing the piranhas to jump up. The group had no choice but to kill these piranhas in the air with extreme caution. But no matter how careful they were, there were simply too many piranhas. They didn't care if 1 or 2 fish were killed, but tens of thousands of piranhas would jump up. Left with no choice, the people on the bamboo raft could only push their companion's body into the river and watch as he was eaten by the piranhas. After the giant jungle ape threw out that huge rock, there was no other suitable object nearby to throw at it. It could only beat its chest furiously, roared a few times, and slowly walked back to the group. Even the powerful 7 stars giant jungle ape didn't dare to enter the water easily. In such a short period of time, 11 of their companions had died from the river to the bank. There were only 12 left. 3 of them were 5th-degree realm experts, and the other 9 were 4th-degree realm experts. Finally, the bamboo raft was stabilized, and the other end was simply secured. This simple bamboo raft, which was made from 2 big tree trunks, was temporarily safe. It carried the 12 experts, leaning on the tree trunks and the current, and slowly moved toward the other side. Unfortunately, the bamboo raft was too simple and crude. Although the experts on the bamboo raft were experts, they weren't experts in rowing. It wasn't easy to rely on 3 tree trunks to move towards the other side, not to mention rowing quickly. The short distance of 200 meters took them half an hour to cross. In this short period of time, they had been brought downstream for a long distance. Even though the river flow was not fast, they had drifted for at least 5 miles in half an hour. The moment they reached the riverbank, they didn't dare to delay and immediately rushed back along the riverbank. They had to keep up with Wang Sheng's footsteps, otherwise they didn't know if they could leave the grounds of Thousand Despair alive. If they wanted to find a way out, they could only follow Wang Sheng to the end. Many of them were regretting following Wang Sheng into the grounds of Thousand Despair. If they had known this would happen, they would have turned back at the valley. Even if they were laughed at when they returned, even if they were scolded as cowards, it was better than dying in the grounds of Thousand Despair for no reason. It had only been 2 days, and there were only 12 of them left from the original 100 over people. Thinking of the tragic deaths of their companions, they couldn't help but feel sorrowful. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Since they had already come this far, they could only brace themselves and continue on. They sprinted along the riverbank and found the place where Wang Sheng had rested earlier. After a careful observation, they followed the tracks that Wang Sheng had left behind. If they didn't hurry, there would be fierce demonic beasts coming to take over their territory. Song Ming had even begun to ponder whether they should catch up to Wang Sheng and have a good talk with Wang Sheng. If they didn't kill Wang Sheng, they could let Wang Sheng join them and walk through the grounds of Thousand Despair together. Unfortunately, they could only ponder this idea in their hearts and didn't dare to say it out loud. The various clans had already suffered heavy casualties in their pursuit of Wang Sheng. More than 200 people had died in Wang Sheng's hands. Even if they were willing to let Wang Sheng go, would Wang Sheng believe them? As they went deeper into the forest, their speed inevitably slowed down. No one knew how many years it had been since the grounds of despair had been inhabited. Finding a good path was no easy task. Even Wang Sheng had no choice but to find a way to carve a path through the forest. Thus, it was only natural that he would not be able to keep up. The pursuers behind them were relatively simple. All they had to do was follow the path that Wang Sheng had opened up. There was no need to go through so much trouble. However, after following them for another 2 days, the pursuers had to face a new problem. They had run out of food and water. In the grounds of Thousand Despair, without food and water was also a dead end. Chapter 74. When they accepted this mission, none of the experts from the aristocratic families thought that it would be a difficult mission. Even when they entered the forest, they didn't think too much about it. In any case, they could always get food and drink in the outside world. Killing a demonic beast was very easy, and they could get water from any river. But they didn't expect that they would enter the land of Thousand Extremities. After entering the land of Thousand Extremities, it wasn't so easy to find food and drink at any time. It was true that the experts sent by the aristocratic families were all experts, but they were all experts from the aristocratic families. They weren't the kind of experts who needed to survive in the wild. A high level of martial arts cultivation didn't mean that one's ability to survive in the wild was also high. It wasn't that no one was prepared at any time, but most of them only prepared food and water for a few days. They didn't plan to fight for a long time, so they didn't prepare enough. Not to mention that their companions died or were injured along the way. Sometimes, they would even throw away some things in the way in order to survive, causing their supplies to dwindle. A few people in the group also had storage rings, but they weren't top-notch storage rings like Wang Sheng's, so they couldn't hold a lot of space. Even if they brought food and water, after a few days of self-consumption and sharing some with their companions, it was basically all used up. Thus, everyone began to face the predicament of having no food and water. Food was fine. There were still some low-level demonic beasts in the land of Thousand Extremities. Everyone was an expert, so as long as they put down their pride, they could still hunt some to fill their stomachs. The big problem was water. There was no shortage of water in the land of Thousand Extremities. Not to mention the river with the piranhas, there would always be some small streams in the forest. The problem was that this water was raw water. No one knew where it flowed through, and no one knew what it was mixed with. In any case, there was a strange smell. Even if some of the water looked very clear, sometimes it was very uncomfortable to drink it. Food was fine. Everyone had brought fire seeds with them, so they could hunt a demonic beast and make a fire to roast it. But water couldn't be helped. No one had brought a pot, so it was impossible to boil some water. They could only bite the bullet and drink the cold water. Wang Sheng didn't have this kind of worry at all. After going through strict training, Wang Sheng himself was a very professional wilderness survival expert. When they went out on missions, not only did they bring fire seeds, but they also brought individual rations and water purification tablets. More importantly, Wang Sheng had a wok with him. The bulletproof helmet on his head was a helmet for protection and a pot for cooking. In addition, Wang Sheng had brought a lot more water than the trackers. The vest he wore was a water pouch, ensuring that Wang Sheng could drink water while marching. Wang Sheng had always kept a sufficient amount of water in his storage ring, just to deal with situations like this. Therefore, Wang Sheng hadn't reached the point of drinking water from the stream yet, but the guys following him had been drinking for 2 days. If they were outside, without the pressure of survival, with the physique of these experts, not to mention drinking raw water, it would not be a problem for them to drink it every day. However, they were now in the grounds of Thousand Despair, where they could face the pressure of survival at any moment. The slightest carelessness could mean death. Everyone's nerves were stretched taut, and their spirits were exhausted to the extreme. Not only that, even their bodies were exhausted. In such a desperate situation, the consumption of physical strength was very high, regardless of whether it was an expert or a low-level expert. After a few days, even Tang Ao, Shi Chong, and Song Ming, who were 5th-degree realm experts, were almost unable to hold on. Those who were in a lower realm than them were even more uncomfortable. Therefore, the decline of their resistance became a natural thing. Drinking too much raw water in the wild, the disease took the opportunity to enter. From the 3rd day after crossing the river, some of them started to have diarrhea. By the 5th day, the number of people who had diarrhea had increased to 7. From the time the first person started to have diarrhea, Tang Ao realized that something was wrong. In a hurry, he cleverly carved a piece of stone into a simple wok and finally solved the problem of drinking raw water and cold water. However, he didn't know that some water might not be fine even if it was boiled. In addition, there were some problems that were not related to water at all. After entering the forest, all kinds of mosquito bites never stopped. On Wang Sheng's side, it was still all right. His jungle camouflage, military boots, and gloves basically guaranteed that his body and limbs would not be bitten. The camouflage oil smeared on his face also had the effect of repelling insects. In addition to the fact that Wang Sheng had already made a sackcloth to prevent insects from biting his head, face, and neck, the mosquitoes basically could not find a place to bite. In addition, before Wang Sheng went on the mission, he had already been vaccinated against various infectious diseases. Some were lifetime immunity. Some were effective for half a year or even longer. As long as Wang Sheng was careful, the chances of contracting an infectious disease was extremely low. Trackers did not have this kind of experience, nor did they have this kind of technology. Although they could barely cover their head and face, it was after all not comparable to Wang Sheng's targeted equipment. Everyone was suffering from the insect bites. Under normal circumstances, 4th or 5th degree realm experts could resist the mosquito bites, but that was under normal circumstances. This was the Thousand Extremities grounds, and those who could survive were all valiant species. Mosquitoes were no exception. In addition, experts could not use their spiritual qi to protect themselves at any time. Even if they could block thousands of bites, they might still be bitten once they slipped through the net. Some diseases were caused by special mosquito bites, such as malaria. The more bites one was bitten, there was always the possibility of being bitten, especially when the body and mind were exhausted and the resistance was low. In short, after a few days, the number of people with diarrhea had increased to 7. This time, the whole team was at a loss. Ordinary diarrhea could be treated with some common detoxification pills, but malaria was a different matter altogether. Even if it was effective, it would take 1 to 2 days. And 2 days was enough to drag a valiant expert into a pile of mud. In fact, there was a limit to the number of antidote pills. If they realized something was wrong, even a normal expert would soak the antidote pill in the water to drink. With so many people sharing it, the small amount of antidote pills was quickly used up. 12 people, 7 had diarrhea. The whole team was almost completely dragged to a halt. At this time, not to mention tracking Wang Sheng, it was a problem whether they could advance or not. Among the 7 people, the 5th degree realm expert, Shi Cheng, was one of them. Previously, he had relied on his high cultivation to not care about it, but now he had tasted the bitter fruit. This kind of disease, no matter if he was an expert or not, as long as he relaxed, it would take advantage of him. Tang Ao and Song Ming were speechless when they saw this scene. If the team stopped here and could not keep up with Wang Sheng's pace, there was only death waiting for them. Powerful demonic beasts would not just stay in one place. When they were hunting for food, they would search everywhere. If they discovered them, it would be a fierce battle. And in this place, the weakest ferocious demonic beast had the power of 6th degree realm. Only by keeping up with Wang Sheng would they be able to find a temporary safe place to rest. But in the current situation, the 7 of them could not move, so it was a joke for all of them to keep up with Wang Sheng. What should they do? Tang Ao and Song Ming both looked at the 7 patients who were paralyzed. Without them dragging them down, perhaps the remaining 5 would have a chance to follow Wang Sheng out of the Thousand Extremities grounds, wouldn't it? Chapter 75. As a 5th stage realm top exponent, Shi Cheng had probably never thought that there would be a day where he would become a burden and be abandoned. How could such a ridiculous thing happen to him? 5th stage realm top exponent. Which aristocratic family, sect, or even the imperial court wouldn't he be worshipped? Everyone knew about 4th Master Dai. He was only at 4th stage realm P cultivation, but he was already the number 1 expert in Dai family's external affairs. Usually 4th Master Dai was enough to deal with Dai family's matters. Just look at 4th Master Dai's extravagance when he went out. Even if he was a relative of the emperor, that would be the same. If any ignorant person dared to say that the Dai family was abandoning fourth Master Dai because he was a burden, it was unknown how many people would spit on his face. Even the fourth stage realm fourth Master Dai was like this. Then what kind of status did the fifth stage realm top exponent Shurchong, who fourth Master Dai, had to kneel down and lick? In the Shur family, Shurchong was a top exponent who could take charge of an area and would not be dispatched easily. The moment he was dispatched, he would be treated as a core exponent who could decide the outcome of the battle. This kind of top exponent would be treated as a burden and abandoned. It was such an unbelievable thing outside, but it happened in 1,000 despair grounds. If it was outside, if he dared to use this kind of idea, Shurchong would let him know what was worse than begging for death. But now, Shurchong couldn't even say a word of rejection. Shurchong had been suffering from diarrhea for 3 days, and it happened 20 overtimes a day, so he had turned into a pile of mud. The people in this world didn't know that there was a saying of replenishing fluids and electrolytes when one had diarrhea. Even if he was a fifth stage realm top exponent, relying on his strong physique and cultivation to withstand it, but after 3 days, he couldn't take it anymore. Want to be angry? But his body didn't listen to him, and he didn't even have the energy to be angry. Want to blame? Who to blame? Tang Ao and Song Ming? Shurchong knew clearly that if he didn't keep up with Wang Sheng's footsteps, even Tang Ao and Song Ming would die. In order to live on, what was the point of giving up a hopeless person like him? Shurchong himself understood that if it was someone else who was suffering from diarrhea and he was the one making the decision, he would also make the decision to give up. But if this happened to him, he really couldn't accept it. No matter how unwilling Shurchong and those 6 top exponents were, or how angry they were, they couldn't change Tang Ao and Song Ming's decision. They weren't from the same clan in the first place. They had joined forces at the last minute in the land of 1,000 despair. Everyone was more than happy to see Shurchong die. Therefore, Shurchong and the 6 experts with diarrhea were left on the spot, fending for themselves. Tang Ao and Song Ming even generously left behind a large piece of demon beast meat. As for how long it could last, only God knew. The emotions of the 7 people were the same: anger, unwillingness, and sorrow. If he had known this would happen, he wouldn't have joined the mission. He would have turned around at the entrance of the valley, and he would have turned around and left the moment he discovered the 6-star, earth-shattering bear. However, it was too late to say anything now. He could only accept this outcome. Sadly, the 7 of them had diarrhea and did not even have the strength to commit suicide. They couldn't even stand up, so they could only lie down. In just a short while, 2 of them couldn't help but poo again. Actually, there was nothing in his stomach, but water kept coming out. He couldn't hold it in. Shurchong trembled and took out a small jade bottle from his pocket. After a long while, he finally took out a wax pill from the bottle. At this moment, he didn't even have the strength to peel off the wax pill. He simply put the wax pill into his mouth and chewed it. This was not a life-saving medicine. If there was, Shurchong would have used it long ago. This wax pill was actually poison, a poison that could make people die painlessly. Originally, the wax pill was given to some traders that Shurchong had a good relationship with. In the end, before he could use it, it was Shurchong's turn to use it. Finally, he bit the wax pill, and a stream of sweet juice flowed down his throat and into his stomach. Shurchong's face revealed a trace of happiness. He hadn't tasted such a sweet taste for a long time. When was the last time he tasted it? That's right, it was before the mission. He drank Bao Qing Yutang's newly released snow candy. It was really sweet. Recalling the sweetness of the snow candy, Shurchong closed his eyes in happiness and slowly stopped breathing. As a 5th stage realm expert, even if he was going to die, he couldn't die humiliatingly in the mouths of some low-level demonic beasts without any resistance. The other 6 experts who had been abandoned didn't have the same preparation as Shurchong. Those pitiful fellows could only wait helplessly, waiting for the moment when death came. No matter if it was dying in the stomach of the demonic beasts or dying of illness or hunger, it was better than waiting helplessly for death. Tang Ao, Song Ming, and the others didn't even have the courage to look back. They could only bear with the pain of abandoning their companions and took a step forward, chasing up to Wang Sheng. If it wasn't for the fact that there was no other way, who would be willing to abandon their companions? Tang Ao and Song Ming couldn't understand why even a fifth-stage realm expert like Shi Chong couldn't do it. But why was that mediocre Wang Sheng still alive and kicking? This doubt was something that they couldn't understand even if they broke their heads. It wasn't easy to catch up with Wang Sheng from the riverside until now. Whether it was Tang Ao, Song Ming, or the other 3 4th-stage realm experts, no one was willing to give up this last hope. They didn't dare to rush up to kill Wang Sheng. Who knew if there was a demonic beast in front of Wang Sheng that was even stronger than the 6-star earth-shattering bear? Some lessons once was enough, but they didn't dare to lose track of him. They had already gone such a long distance into the depths of the Thousand Despair. Calculating it, it was almost 300 miles. At this depth, 5th-stage realm experts were trash, not to mention 4th-stage realm experts. Their only hope was Wang Sheng. If they could get out, Tang Ao and Song Ming would desperately admonish their masters to not make enemies with Wang Sheng no matter what. This man was too mysterious and too scary. It wasn't worth it for the family to pay such a huge price for him. In front, Wang Sheng had already confirmed that there were only 5 people following him. The infrared binoculars could clearly identify the human silhouette at this distance. That was to say, the pursuers behind him were only left with the last 5 threats. However, Wang Sheng didn't dare to let his guard down. To be able to persist till this stage, they were definitely the strongest 5. The nearer to the end, the nearer to success, the more he couldn't let his guard down. Wang Sheng was well aware of this principle. A man who travels 100 miles is halfway. The only problem was how to get rid of them. Wang Sheng didn't really want to bring 5 people with him to pass through the Thousand Despair. With them around, Wang Sheng would have to face the danger of being hunted down at any moment. The Ground of Despair was a perilous place to begin with, and Wang Sheng did not want to have to worry about his pursuers the next time he faced the threat of the Ground of Despair. After walking for a distance and climbing up a small hill, Wang Sheng realized that there seemed to be a chance to get rid of them. Chapter 76. From the direction Wang Sheng came from, it was a small hill. Due to the fact that the terrain along the way was very gentle, the increase in altitude was not particularly obvious. However, when he reached the top of the hill, there was a cliff that looked like it was cut by a knife. The cliff was very high. Wang Sheng estimated it to be more than 200 meters high. The cut was straight, and there was even a little depression. There was no place for him to stand. In other words, for Wang Sheng to reach this point, he had already reached a dead end. There was no way forward, no way back. The cliff was more than 200 meters high. Even if Wang Sheng had prepared a rope, it was not so long. As for retreating, behind them were the 5 experts who had been chasing them. Not to mention the difference in their cultivation. Just the fact that their companions had been killed by Wang Sheng's schemes was enough for them to gnash their teeth and skin Wang Sheng alive. Wang Sheng was very clear about what would happen if he fell into their hands. Without the threat of the fierce beasts in the land of 1,000 Despair, those guys would definitely cut him into pieces. However, heaven never bars one's way. Just in front of this cliff, about 30 meters high and 40 meters long, there was a higher cliff in the shape of an eagle's beak, which was not connected to this side. About half the distance between this side and the eagle's beak, there was a cliff that was almost exactly the same as where Wang Sheng was now. In other words, if Wang Sheng could jump over the cliff with the help of the eagle's beak, he could easily get rid of the 5 guys behind him. It was not that Wang Sheng was boasting, but Wang Sheng knew that he would one day escape into the forest, so he was fully prepared with all kinds of survival equipment. Dozens of meters of rope were necessary, and some small tools were also necessary. But Tang Ao and Song Ming never thought that they would encounter such a situation one day. To put it bluntly, with Tang Ao and Song Ming's strength, if they wanted to go out, they would be surrounded by servants. Why would they need to prepare these things? Therefore, even if Wang Sheng was prepared, Tang Ao and Song Ming might not be able to. Right now, this was the path that lay before Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng did not act immediately. Hasty actions would arouse the suspicion of the people behind him. Although those fellows were 300 meters away, Wang Sheng estimated that if they were to charge at full force, he would only be able to fight for 10 seconds at most. Tang Ao, Song Ming, and the others had learned their lesson. When they saw Wang Sheng sitting down to rest, they absolutely did not dare to rush over. Wang Sheng sat down at the top of the mountain. His current position was quite high. As long as Tang Ao and Song Ming raised their heads, they would be able to see him. Therefore, when they saw that Wang Sheng was resting, they also found a suitable place to sit down and rest. To be honest, Tang Ao and Song Ming were also tired. Even though their cultivation bases were many times higher than Wang Sheng's, they had to be extremely careful with their every move in the grounds of Thousand Despair. Not only did they have to be careful not to lose sight of Wang Sheng, they also had to pay attention to the surroundings. Not only that, they might not be able to tell if a demon beast would rush over. They even had to be on guard against some snakes, insects, and ants. Wang Sheng dared to sleep, but they did not dare to sleep to death. For the past few days, they had not been able to eat or sleep well. Their companions had died, tragically one after another, which added to their psychological burden. For the past few days, they had been training twice as hard as they usually did. Being able to rest, Tang Ao and Song Ming were also secretly happy in their hearts. As long as they could keep an eye on Wang Sheng, it would be fine. Looking at Wang Sheng pointing his arm here and there, no one knew what he was thinking. How could a person give directions to others? Without any professional training, Tang Ao and Song Ming naturally did not know that Wang Sheng was pointing his arm with his thumb. That was a standard distance measuring action. The distance between the two cliffs was more than 70 meters. If Wang Sheng could reach the other side, then even if Tang Ao and Song Ming had high cultivation, they would not be able to do anything. Wang Sheng had never seen anyone who could jump over 70 meters in one go. With such cultivation, they would have already caught him outside. Why would they need to follow him into the grounds of Thousand Despair? The cliff was more than 200 meters high, so it was impossible for Tang Ao and Song Ming to jump down directly. With such a height, even an Iron Man would be flattened if he jumped down. If they wanted to catch up with Wang Sheng, they could only find a way to bypass him. Previously, when they were lagging behind the man-eating ants and man-eating fishes, they were able to catch up with Yongkai by less than half an hour. That was because the man-eating ants had already cleared out all the ferocious demon beasts. But now, they did not have such conditions. They would have to find a place to go down and then find a place to come back up. At that time, whether they would live or die would depend on their own luck. Wang Sheng had brought a rope with him. However, it was not an easy task to throw the rope to the Eagle Beak rock 50 meters away and secure it. Fortunately, Wang Sheng still had a secret weapon, the longbow he seized on the way. The longbow was very strong. Wang Sheng could only pull it with all his strength, which was more than 1,000 kilograms of force. But Wang Sheng knew very well that the rope he brought with him in his storage ring was a native product of this world. It could withstand the force of a person's swing. It was more than 50 meters long and was not light. Using a bow, an arrow might not be effective. However, in addition to this rope, Wang Sheng also had another roll of thin rope. It was made of modern polymer fiber. It was very thin, only a little thicker than silk thread, but it could bear a weight of 300 kilograms. This thin rope was also the tool that Wang Sheng used to strangle a master at close range. It was the one that Elder Li of the Godly Might Prison praised. Others would never imagine that this thin rope was 60 meters long and was wrapped in Wang Sheng's military watch. Although Wang Sheng's watch looked inconspicuous, it had all the functions it should have and many of the functions it shouldn't have. A watch that could be wound automatically, a magnifying glass, a thermometer, a hygrometer, a compass, a string tool, and so on. Wang Sheng could even dismantle this military watch and assemble it into a small solar stove at any time if he wanted to. That was the power of modern technology. A long arrow was held in Wang Sheng's hand, and he carefully fixed a section of the thin rope to the tail of the arrow. This was a very skillful fixing method. It would never slip under direct tension, but as long as Wang Sheng shook it in a unique way, it could be easily untied. Wang Sheng didn't want his secret weapon to be left on the eagle beak rock. The long arrow was blocked by Wang Sheng's body, and the people behind him couldn't see his movements. When everything was ready, Wang Sheng measured the distance again, and then he stood up. A long bow suddenly appeared in his hand. Drawing the bow and putting the arrow, Wang Sheng aimed at a solid rock on the eagle beak rock, pulled the long bow, and shot it with all his might. Seeing Wang Sheng draw the bow and shoot the arrow, the 5 people behind him were startled. Song Ming reacted the fastest. As if he had suddenly realized something, he flew out without saying a word to Wang Sheng, who was at the top of the mountain. Tang Ao was stunned for a moment, and then he vaguely understood something and hurried to catch up. The 3 people behind him didn't dare to be slow, and they quickly caught up. Chapter 77. Song Ming's speed was extremely fast, so fast that Wang Sheng did not expect it. Wang Sheng had just shot an arrow at the eagle's beak rock when Song Ming had already rushed out. By the time Wang Sheng pulled on the string to see if the arrow was stable, Song Ming had already rushed out of the rock. This end of the string was completely fixed to the military watch. Wang Sheng did not need to use his hands to hold it. The watch chain was enough to support Wang Sheng's weight. Without thinking, Wang Sheng jumped off the cliff. After falling for less than 3 meters, he tightened his arm, and the polymer string suddenly tightened. Then, he swung towards the opposite cliff. Song Ming saw Wang Sheng jump off the cliff. When he rushed to the edge of the cliff, Wang Sheng had already swung 5 meters away. Song Ming understood the terrain at a glance, and his heart immediately became anxious. If he let Wang Sheng escape, they would have to face the place of thousand despair by themselves. They did not have Wang Sheng's ability to predict danger. If they stayed here, no matter which direction they went, they would only die. Without even thinking about it, Song Ming rushed toward Wang Sheng, who was swinging toward the opposite side with an invisible thread in his hand. When he rushed to the edge of the cliff, he kicked hard with both feet and rushed towards Wang Sheng like an arrow released from a bow. It was only a distance of 5 to 6 meters. For Song Ming, it was simply a piece of cake. He could jump over it with a standing jump, let alone rush over. While still in the air, Song Ming made a movement to grab Wang Sheng. As long as he could control Wang Sheng, he would be able to survive in the place of thousand despair. He might even be able to explore the mysteries of the place of thousand despair and become famous. Wang Sheng was in the air. There were no ferocious beasts around, and he had no ability to resist. The wonderful prospect made Song Ming smile the moment he jumped off the cliff. Just think about it. In the future, how many people would fight to eulogize the legend of him, Song Ming, jumping off the cliff and capturing Wang Sheng in the nick of time? What a fascinating future it would be. Unfortunately, everything in the future was unpredictable. A small deviation in the present could cause the future to be completely different. When Song Ming saw the strange object that suddenly appeared in Wang Sheng's hand, his heart sank. Glock 17. Wang Sheng leaped over the cliff with one hand on his watch and a polymer rope. He pulled out a Glock 17 with the other. Wang Sheng was surprised that Song Ming dared to rush out without a care for his life, but it was not to the point where he was at a loss. Wang Sheng had no doubt that Song Ming was a master, so he aimed at Song Ming and fired without thinking. The first shot was to the chest, and the second was to the eyeball. This was experience. There was a high chance of hitting the chest, and it could also deal a certain amount of damage to the opponent. The second shot was fatal. Bang! The first gunshot rang out. Song Ming was in the air and had no leverage. He could only take Wang Sheng's shot head-on. At such a close distance, he was hit in the chest. Song Ming had already used his spiritual energy to protect his body. Ordinary hidden weapons had no effect on him. The weaker ones probably wouldn't even be able to penetrate his clothes. The 9mm bullet was powerful enough to penetrate Song Ming's chest robe and even penetrate Song Ming's skin and skin. But when it went further in, it was blocked by Song Ming's muscles and bones. Under the protection of a fifth-degree realm expert's spiritual energy, the 9mm bullet was clamped the moment it touched Song Ming's muscles and rebounded. If it was controlled properly, a wound that penetrated the skin wouldn't even bleed. The pain from this shot made Song Ming completely understand the power of the hidden weapon in Wang Sheng's hand. He felt relieved again. Just this one moment of carelessness allowed the second bullet to drill into Song Ming's eyeball. Song Ming was shocked and hurriedly used his spiritual energy to protect his head. Fortunately, he used his spiritual energy in time, and Song Ming was fearless in the face of danger. He twisted his head slightly in the direction of the bullet didn't go into his brain. Instead, it hit the skull next to him. The collision between the bullet and the skull. This time, it was the skull that won. A fifth-degree realm expert's body had been strengthened to an unimaginable level. Other than the traditional weak parts like the eyes and mouth, the other parts were almost as hard as steel. Even a pistol shot at such a close distance couldn't cause any damage. But even so, one of Song Ming's eyes was instantly blinded. The liquid that flowed out of the eyeball was mixed with blood. In a few moments, Song Ming's face was dyed a strange color. Wang Sheng was shocked, and without thinking, he shot again. The third shot was aimed at Song Ming's other eye. This time, Song Ming was prepared. With a wave of his arm, a bullet was hit by him. It was unknown where it had swept to. However, Song Ming had never thought that from the beginning. Wang Sheng didn't think that he could rely on his Glock 17 to eliminate a super expert who could follow him until now. All he wanted was to delay Song Ming's speed and get rid of the possibility that Song Ming could control him. Just now, Song Ming rushed out of the cliff and was hit by 3 bullets. His body was inevitably affected. Wang Sheng was originally retreating at high speed. When Song Ming missed 3 consecutive opportunities to catch Wang Sheng, the ending was actually already decided. Song Ming's body inevitably fell down the cliff. This was the law of nature. No one could be an exception, not even Song Ming, who was at the 5th-degree realm. Seeing his hand getting further and further away from Wang Sheng, Song Ming's heart was filled with despair. He thought that a small guy who couldn't resist in the air would be easy to catch. Who knew that Wang Sheng had such a small hidden weapon? One wrong move, and Song Ming could only watch helplessly as he stepped into a dead end. Falling from a height of more than 200 meters, even if he fell for 7 seconds, he could reach a speed of 70 meters per second. If he fell like this, even if he didn't die, he would break his arms and legs. Encountering such an encounter in the ground of thousand despair, the ending was already decided. Of course, Song Ming himself knew that he was going to die. He would no longer show mercy to Wang Sheng. Since he was going to die, he would drag Wang Sheng down with him. A cold light shot out from Song Ming's hand and went straight to the top of Wang Sheng's hand, which was holding the rope. Wang Sheng must have some kind of strange rope which could bear his weight. As long as the rope was cut, Wang Sheng's ending would not be any better than his. How could Wang Sheng give him such a chance? He raised his hand and fired again, hitting the cold light that Song Ming threw out. Bang! Bang! 2 shots accurately hit the sharp blade that Song Ming shot out. One bullet had already changed the direction of a sharp blade. The second bullet was even more of a safety measure, directly hitting the sharp blade to an unknown place. Not only Song Ming, even Tang Ao and the other 3 who had rushed to the edge of the cliff saw this scene. Song Ming let out a scream of unwillingness. He waved his arms and legs as he fell heavily toward the cliff below. Chapter 78. Tang Ao saw Song Ming fall down the cliff, and he understood why Song Ming rushed out of the cliff without any regard for his life. However, he could only watch helplessly. Wang Sheng had already swum more than halfway down the cliff, and Song Ming's screams continued. Tang Ao's heart was getting colder and colder as Song Ming's screams continued. He couldn't understand many things. Why was Wang Sheng able to predict the danger in the 1,000 extremes? Why was Wang Sheng able to predict that there would be a cliff and prepared a rope? Why did Wang Sheng know that it was not easy to find food and water? So he prepared so much. There were many things that he couldn't understand. Suddenly, a thought flashed through his mind. Could it be that Wang Sheng came out from the Thousand Extremes? Otherwise, why would he be so familiar with the Thousand Extremes? In that instant, Wang Sheng's figure landed firmly on the opposite cliff. At the same time, Song Ming's wretched cries finally stopped. Bang! A heavy landing sound came from the bottom of the cliff, and then there was no more sound. Wang Sheng, Tang Ao, and the other three looked down at the same time. Unfortunately, there's also a bunch of bushes below, and Song Ming's figure had already disappeared in the bushes. But at this height, Tang Ao no longer had any illusions. With a shake of his hand, the polymer thread connected to the arrow's tail automatically fell off. Under the action of the elastic spring in Wang Sheng's watch, it was retracted like a tape measure. From the beginning to the end, Tang Ao and the other three did not clearly see what kind of rope Wang Sheng used. They only saw that the arrow was still shaking. Wang Sheng had left. He only looked at them for a moment, and then he disappeared behind the opposite cliff without looking back. Tang Ao waited until Wang Sheng's figure could not be seen. Then he started to talk to himself. What should we do? What should we do? Tang Ao kept scratching his head, and his face was ferocious. He angrily spun around, and his fierce eyes looked at the other three survivors from time to time. Tang Ao's gaze was somewhat cold, and the other three did not dare to do anything to avoid provoking Tang Ao. In fact, the three of them were also terrified. All the aristocratic families had sent out their fifth-degree realm experts. There were a total of 200 to 300 men, and they were all here to kill Wang Sheng. But he had not expected that over 100 of them would be blasted to death at the valley, and among them, there were 10 over 5th stage realm top exponents. It wasn't easy for the rest to follow them into the Thousand Despair grounds. In the end, a few of them were smacked to death by the 6-star earth-splitting bear, and half of them were devoured by the man-eating ants. A few more died from the man-eating fish, and 7 of them suffered from diarrhea. In the end, one of the 2 remaining 5th-degree realm experts, Song Ming, fell off the cliff. All of this was because of that lousy kid who was at most in the 1st-degree realm. But what did he do? He didn't even kill a single one of them. He just took advantage of the situation and caused the people who followed him to suffer. Was this guy still human? If I had known earlier, I wouldn't have followed them in. This was the umpteenth time everyone sighed with emotion. However, he could only sigh in his heart. Who could say it out loud? Who dared to say it? If Tang Ao said it when he was on the verge of collapse, wouldn't he be courting death? I have a way to go down. One of the experts was probably frightened by Tang Ao's craziness. Even his voice was timid, and he didn't have the dignity of a 4th-stage realm expert at all. What way? Tang Ao suddenly stopped his craziness and stared at the expert who spoke. The other 2 also turned to look at Zhang Xian. We didn't bring any rope, but we can use those vines. The expert who spoke pointed to the vines which were everywhere in the forest and said, "Find a sturdy one and weave it. It's not difficult to go down." He didn't say the first half of the sentence. It was indeed not difficult to go down, but to go up to the other side, it wasn't that easy. But at this moment, Tang Ao's eyes were red. Some words shouldn't be said easily in case of mishap. Let's go down first. It must be said that Tang Ao was able to enter the 5th-stage realm, so his state of mind was definitely stable. Previously, when he saw Song Ming lose his life, he felt a little sad. Now that there was a way, he immediately calmed down. He thought of what his companion didn't say. Let's go down and think of a way to go up. The 4 of them didn't dare to delay. They were very clear that if they were any slower here, Wang Sheng would walk further and their lives would be more and more uncertain. The 4 of them rushed into the forest. When they saw the vines, they tested their toughness and then started to chop them crazily. Their efficiency was much higher than those professional woodcutters. Very soon, the 4 of them gathered enough vines and connected them into a long rope. One end was fixed on a sturdy tree and the other end was thrown down the cliff. In fact, the length was still more than 10 meters, but they didn't care anymore. Anyway, they could jump down from a height of more than 10 meters without getting hurt. They didn't want to waste time on the last point. Following the vines, the 4 of them climbed down the cliff. They were all experts, and their skills were very agile. Very soon, they reached the bottom of the vines. Tang Ao was the first one. He let go of the rope and jumped down. He immediately ran to the opposite side to see if there was a way to go up. The other three also followed suit and jumped down one by one. They were about to follow Tang Ao, but after a few steps, they saw Tang Ao standing there. Following Tang Ao's gaze, the three of them saw Song Ming's corpse. Song Ming was very unfortunate. The place where he fell did not have any soft cushion. Instead, there were a few tree stumps that were broken by some unknown demon beast. The sharp stumps pointed towards the sky. Song Ming fell on one of the stumps, and the tree stumps directly penetrated his chest. His death was too horrible to look at. Go! Tang Ao only felt sad for a moment. He had no choice but to force himself to move forward. He was now everyone's backbone. He couldn't show a weak expression. The group didn't delay and quickly rushed to the bottom of the opposite cliff. Then, the four of them split into two directions. Each of them searched for a section to see if they could find a suitable place to go up. Even without Tang Ao's reminder, everyone knew that they had to hurry up. The tree stumps were still very fresh. It meant that they'd been broken by some unknown demon beast recently. If they couldn't find a way to go up, they could only stay at the bottom of the cliff and become the demon beast's food. Heaven took pity on them. Perhaps heaven never bars one's way. Just when everyone was about to fall into despair, one of the experts suddenly found a narrow gap in the mountain that led to the top of the cliff. Although the gap was very narrow, it was more than enough for one person to go in. The four of them immediately gathered there. Then, they followed the narrow gap and used their hands and feet to climb up the cliff bit by bit. When Tang Ao reached the top of the cliff through the narrow gap, he felt a trace of happiness, as if he had just escaped from death. He was so happy that he almost cried. Chapter 79. Wang Xing didn't know about Tang Ao's happiness. He had already climbed over the cliff and went down the mountain. He was about to pass through a jungle at the bottom of the valley. This jungle was very strange. The vegetation looked slightly different from the ones on the road before, but it was still generally the same. There was only one thing that was very unique, and that was that there was a faint white mist shrouding the entire jungle from the foot of the mountain, making the entire jungle seem vague and indistinct. Wang Sheng tidied up his helmet and adjusted the protective cover made of linen, which looked like a large bamboo hat, around his neck. Then, he checked the activated charcoal filter layer of the protective cover around his mouth and nose. After putting on the protective cover, he strode into the jungle. As soon as he walked here, the combat consciousness avatar had a faint warning. It was different from when he encountered the 6-star earth-shattering bear. The closer he was to it, the stronger the warning. It was also different from the man-eating ants. There was a crazy warning when he stood still. This time, although it was the same warning when he stood still, the level of the warning was very different. There was danger, but it wasn't very strong. That was probably what it meant. The combat consciousness avatar couldn't explain it clearly to him, and it couldn't communicate with words. It could only be understood by Wang Sheng himself. In this situation, what Wang Sheng could do was to be careful and try not to make stupid mistakes. The small danger wasn't fatal. As long as he passed through this jungle, he should be able to sleep peacefully. Instinctively, Wang Sheng took out the infrared telescope and looked at the top of the mountain behind him. This was a habit. Although he knew that the people chasing behind him might not be able to catch up in time, Wang Sheng still looked carefully, lest he miss something that he shouldn't have overlooked. This made Wang Sheng speechless. 4 red figures appeared at the top of the cliff at this time. Needless to say, it must be those guys who were chasing after him. One was missing because the one who fell down didn't catch up. These guys were really haunting him, making Wang Sheng a little helpless. It was very troublesome to use a sniper rifle in the jungle. With so many trees between them, it might not be able to accurately hit the enemy. In addition, the sound of gunfire would attract some powerful monsters, which was not worth it. It seemed that he could only let those fellows follow behind him like maggots on a tarsal bone. How troublesome! Suddenly, Wang Sheng looked at the faint white fog in the forest and fell into deep thought. In the grounds of 1,000 extremities, the most dangerous things were not necessarily powerful demonic beasts. There were also many undetectable dangers. For example, some tiny insects might be a terrifying species that could kill without spilling blood. Another example was the poisonous miasma. This was a valley with poor ventilation. After so many years of accumulation of fallen leaves and dead animals and plants, it was simply the best environment to generate miasma. It was similar to the valley filled with methane. Why would the combat consciousness mini-man sound the alarm? Other than the poisonous miasma that was everywhere, Wang Sheng could not think of any other possibilities. Looking at the infrared images of the four people behind him, Wang Sheng also felt a little helpless. The infrared telescope was about to use up half of its battery. Although he only used it for a short while each time, he would probably run out of energy by the time he walked out of the grounds of despair. At that time, it could only be used as an ordinary optical telescope. Tang Ao and the rest were in a hurry to catch up. After all, the happy time at the top of the cliff was only for a short while. If they could not catch up with Wang Sheng, it would be a waste. They had already seen from the top of the mountain that there was fog at the foot of the mountain. If they did not hurry up and catch up, it was estimated that Wang Sheng would disappear into the foggy forest. Song Ming's life was really not worth it. If he had known that there was such a narrow gap on the opposite cliff, he would not have been in such a hurry. It was just a delay, but Song Ming was too anxious, so he failed on the verge of success. He failed to catch up with Wang Sheng and fell down. Everyone knew that Song Ming also made an error in judgment because of the pressure, but after all, they were considered companions, so some words were not said. The only fortunate thing was that the sound of Wang Sheng's pistol was not as loud as the sound of a sniper rifle, so it did not attract the attacks of powerful demonic beasts. Quickly descending the mountain, the four people followed the traces left by Wang Sheng all the way. This was a deserted place. As long as there were traces left by Wang Sheng, there was no doubt that it was left by Wang Sheng. At this point, Wang Sheng was also helpless. The reason why he could not get rid of these guys in the land of Thousand Despair was because of this. If these guys were a little further away, Wang Sheng would have enough time to deal with the traces he left behind. But they were just a few hundred meters behind him, and each of them had amazing eyesight and hearing. He could not get rid of them, even if he wanted to. Wang Sheng was not arrogant enough to think that he was the only one who had enhanced his eyesight. There were many times when he was caught by others because of various tracking methods. At this point, Wang Sheng would never underestimate his opponents. This was his instinct as a sniper. The further they went, the thicker the white fog became, and the visibility had decreased to a few tens of meters. This was already an extremely serious smog on Earth, and it was even more dangerous in the forest here. Tang Ao and the others were anxious, so they quickly followed Wang Sheng. Unknowingly, their breathing had become rapid, and even a lot of their physical strength had been consumed. This was a very normal phenomenon. Along the way, they had almost always been like this. Who would calculate whether the rapid breathing and physical strength consumption rate was a little fast? Wang Sheng's attire had not changed. From the outside to the inside of the land of Thousand Despair, he had always been wearing the gaudy camouflage uniform and the helmet on his head. After entering the forest, he had added a linen bamboo hat to cover his head and neck. This was also very normal. Tang Ao and the others were annoyed by the small mosquitoes before they realized what the bamboo hat was for. They did the same, but they were not as well prepared as Wang Sheng. They only used some clothes to cover their heads and faces, revealing only their eyes. Moreover, they constantly used their spirit chi to protect themselves. Finally, they were spared the pain of being bitten by mosquitoes. As for the gaudy oil paint on Wang Sheng's face, everyone, whether they were dead or alive, thought that it was the totem of Wang Sheng, the barbarian tribe. They never thought that it was some kind of tactical oil paint, let alone repelling mosquitoes. Of course, the hard military green camouflage mask on his mouth and nose was also regarded as the same totem. This was how the barbarians dressed. Some of them had a large number of tattoos on their faces and bodies, with some messy pictures on them. Wang Sheng's was considered one of the better ones. It was just a tattoo. It was likely that he was a semi-civilized barbarian. Based on this understanding, the active carbon filter layer in the mask would not be discovered. Tang Ao and the others still didn't realize that they had already stepped on the edge of death. Chapter 80. Wang Sheng's mouth and nose cover was made of hard material. There was a layer of space in the middle that could be stuffed with a removable filter layer. There were two small ports on the side that could be connected to two compressed airbags to ensure that Wang Sheng could breathe normally in the water. The filter layer was filled with activated charcoal. The original filter layer was carefully made by modern industry, and its filtering effect was excellent. However, it had been used for a few days in the land of thousand extremes, and the filtering effect had long disappeared. The filter layer that Wang Sheng was using now was made by himself in Shanglin City and Linchuan City. Activated charcoal wasn't a very advanced technology, and Wang Sheng could easily make it. It was just that it wasn't as pure and efficient as the industrial one. The effect was that the usage time was not as long as the original one, at most half. But as long as there was a filter layer, it was better than nothing. Wang Sheng had made dozens of such filter layers, and it was enough for Wang Sheng to use when he encountered such a situation. When Wang Sheng caught a whiff of the putrid stench that was everywhere in the forest through the filter mesh and the linen cloth that was wrapped around it, Wang Sheng knew that the filter mesh had been changed. Along the way, Wang Sheng had already changed it twice, and if he changed it again, it would be the third time. Just in this forest, Wang Sheng had already used two, so one could imagine what kind of gas Tang Ao and the others normally breathed. Tang Ao and the others didn't think that it was a big problem. The smell in this forest was a little stronger, and the stench was a little stronger. But in an old forest that was hundreds of years old, how could there be the good smell? After so many years of accumulation of rotten leaves, it would be strange if it smelled good. Didn't the forest that they had walked through in the land of thousand extremes all have similar smells? There was nothing strange about it. If there was anything different, it would be that this forest was foggy and it was more difficult to track the traces left by Wang Sheng. They had to keep a close eye on it. Otherwise, if they weren't careful, they would walk into a fork in the road. Fortunately, Wang Sheng didn't go too far. Although Tang Ao couldn't see Wang Sheng's figure, he could hear Wang Sheng's movements from a few hundred meters away. However, this required him to be extremely focused. Sometimes, the snapping of a branch was not necessarily caused by Wang Sheng. Perhaps it was caused by a demonic beast. Just like this, Tang Ao controlled the general direction, while the other 3 4th-stage realm experts obediently listened to Tang Ao's instructions, searching for traces left behind by Wang Sheng on the ground and on the trees. At the same time, they had to be on guard against any sudden appearance of demonic beasts. They were extremely anxious. When one was so nervous, one would naturally overlook certain things. For example, the stench from the jungle. The human sense of smell was adaptable. No matter how smelly a place was, they would naturally get used to it after smelling it many times. This was also the reason for the saying, staying in a room of orchids for too long, one would not smell its fragrance, and staying in the restaurant of abalone for too long, one would not smell its stench. Now Tang Ao and the rest had already adapted to the stench in the jungle. Initially, they still felt disgusted, but after walking for a while, they didn't care about it anymore. Everyone's thoughts were still focused on how to follow Wang Sheng closely and not let him escape. When Wang Sheng went around in circles in the jungle and changed the 6th activated carbon filter layer, Wang Sheng finally felt some signs of qi deficiency. He was panting and his head was slightly dizzy, as if he was suffering from hypoglycemia. After swallowing a detoxification pill, which he got from LV Wenho in the Imperial Treasury, Wang Sheng felt better. He had to say that the last time he did business with LV Wenho, the result was quite good. LV Wenho looked like a sissy, but the things he gave were all good stuff. This kind of non-specific but effective detoxification pill, although it wasn't specially developed for miasma, it might be effective for a part of it. Even Wang Sheng, who was wearing a layer of linen filter and activated charcoal filter, found it hard to breathe for such a long time. On top of that, he even needed to take a detoxification pill. One could only imagine how Tang Ao and the others were feeling. Tang Ao and the others no longer paid attention to the smell, but their body's reaction had clearly told them that they were poisoned. They were all masters, and they had experienced many battles, so they could tell whether they were poisoned or not. They could even guess how they were poisoned. Besides the miasma, there couldn't be anything else. This white mist was clearly poisonous miasma. It was ridiculous that they actually followed Wang Sheng into this miasma jungle without knowing anything. Fortunately, their cultivation was high enough and the toxicity of the miasma was not strong, so they could rely on their spiritual energy to support themselves for a long time. If it was outside, this little bit of miasma poison would not be a problem at all, and they could easily find a lot of detoxification pills to cure the poison. But the problem was that in order to resist the diarrhea, they had already taken out the detoxification pills and drank them in water. So where would they find more? The ridiculous thing was that everyone, including Tang Ao, actually had a detoxification pill. This was what they secretly hid, but they never thought that they would actually be put to use here. Everyone actually found out that the others were secretly taking the detoxification pills, but no one said anything. In this matter, the eldest brother did not say anything, but they all had their own selfish motives. The only thing that everyone was glad about was that Wang Sheng did not take them on a dangerous path. Along the way, they did not encounter any powerful demon beasts. Otherwise, if they had to fight, they would not be able to survive. Of course, the only thing that everyone was looking forward to was that this jungle was coming to an end, so that they could go out and no longer breathe this poisonous miasma. The jungle was very big. Wang Sheng was in the front, and Tang Ao and the rest were behind. Everyone was only a few hundred meters away from each other, and even after walking for a day and a night, they still could not get out of this jungle. But at this time, Tang Ao and the rest could no longer hold on. Each of them had a detoxification pill, and they had already used it. Their mouths and noses were covered with thick layers of cloth, but it was unable to block the miasma, and the four of them were getting weaker and weaker. Finally, one of the fourth-stage realm expert no longer had any energy, and as he walked on in a daze, his legs suddenly went soft, and he collapsed onto the ground. Hearing the sound of his comrade collapsing, Tang Ao and the other two didn't even have the intention to turn their heads back. Everyone knew that their comrade was dead, and they had no way to save him. Actually, even they themselves could not take care of themselves, so how would they be able to care about others? With the first one, there was the second one and the third one. Tang Ao's cultivation was after all the highest, so he could hold on for the longest time. The remaining two fourth-stage realm experts had already collapsed, but Tang Ao was still trying his best to hold on. However, at this moment, Tang Ao couldn't hold on any longer. His vision was blurry, and everything he looked at had a few shadows. Every step he took was like an old lady whose feet were bound and injured, with arthritis acting up. His footsteps were tottering, and his footsteps were dragging, not walking. Finally, Tang Ao could no longer bear his own weight, and he collapsed onto the ground, unable to get up. Lying on the ground, and smelling the familiar stench, Tang Ao looked at the sky, which was mostly covered by the canopy, and let out a long sigh. Not far away, there was a steady sound of footsteps. Tang Ao looked towards the direction where the sound came from, and vaguely saw a colorful, overlapping figure. It was Wang Sheng whom he was chasing. Chapter 81. The most useless fifth-degree realm experts who had died in the pursuit of Wang Sheng were probably the three of them, Tang Ao, Song Ming, and Shi Chong. If they had died in an open battle, it was understandable that their skills were not as good as others. Even if others heard about it, they would probably give them a thumbs up and call them good men. But it was a pity that they could not defeat the enemy. But the way these fifth-degree realm experts died. The first 10 were killed by a fuel-air bomb in the Methane Valley, which was considered a spectacular way of dying. What about the three of them? Shi Chong died because he was not acclimatized to the environment in the ground of thousand despair and was bitten by mosquitoes. He had diarrhea and felt that there was no hope for him to commit suicide. Song Ming was afraid that Wang Sheng would escape and rush out of the cliff. In the end, he was hit by Wang Sheng's Glock 17 and fell to his death. As for Tang Ao, who had persevered till the end, he was killed by Wang Sheng using the surrounding environment and the poison of the miasma. Fifth-degree realm experts. If it was outside, the Dai family's fourth master Dai could only look up to them and fawn over them. But in the ground of thousand despair, he died a silent death worse than a dog. The number of fifth-degree realm experts who had died in Wang Sheng's hands was a total of 15. Although none of them were personally killed by Wang Sheng, these heads were all counted as Wang Sheng's. And these were only fifth-degree realm experts, not counting the dozens of fourth-degree realm experts, dozens of third-degree realm experts, and hundreds of second-degree realm experts. It could be said that Wang Sheng simply could not be measured by common sense. Whoever used the common sense of this world to frame him would die the fastest. The teams of experts sent out by the various aristocratic families to kill Wang Sheng, other than a few disciples who returned to the family to report, were completely annihilated. No one left the ground of thousand despair alive. After so many days, even the various aristocratic families did not have much hope. Hundreds of years of ancestors had already told them what would happen to those who entered the ground of thousand despair. If they hadn't turned around at the edge of the grounds of thousand despair, they would have died. But after such a long time, it was obvious that those experts did not come out just because they reached the edge. In other words, the aristocratic families could already prepare funerals for their descendants. The sad thing was that the corpses of those who had died in the valley might still be found. But for those who had entered the grounds of thousand despair, they could only set up a cenotaph. All the great clans were in a state of mourning, and there were people in every clan who were beggars. The various clan heads had no choice but to show their condolences to those fifth and fourth-stage realm top exponents' families. This was one of the rare occasions in which all the aristocratic families were doing the same thing at the same time. Fortunately, it was impossible for Wang Sheng, who had entered the land of thousand despair, to survive. This was perhaps the only consolation for the higher-ups of the great clans, and also a loss that made them beat their chests and stamp their feet. Not to mention some bullsh *T peerless treasure map. Just the fact that an ordinary person could become a first-degree realm expert was enough to make them regret what they had done. If they had known earlier, they wouldn't have forced Wang Sheng to be so ruthless. Thinking about it, if this spread out, it would be shameful. So many aristocratic families had actually sent out fifth-degree realm experts to hunt down an ordinary person who was at most a first-degree realm junior. It could be said that they were bullying the weak, and in the end, they still failed. For a period of time, the higher-ups of the various families did not have the face to go out and see anyone. Just as each family was thinking about their own thoughts, Wang Sheng, whom they thought was a dead man, had just walked out of the miasma forest. The miasma forest was huge, and it took Wang Sheng 3 days' time to get out. Just the activated charcoal layer alone had changed more than 10 pieces, and he had also taken 3 antidote pills. In the miasma forest, Wang Sheng had searched Tang Ao and the other 3 fourth-degree realm experts' bodies. Their weapons were almost scrapped from chopping down trees to open a path, and had all turned into rubbish. Everyone actually did not bring many things with them. Those that should be thrown away had already been thrown away along the way, and those that could be left behind were all extremely important. Wang Sheng was very lucky and found a storage ring on Tang Ao's body. It was not as high grade as Wang Sheng's, and the space was not big, only 2 feet high and 2 feet in circumference. But even if it was this small, it would still cost tens of thousands of gold coins outside. There was a scroll in the storage ring, and it was Tang Ao's own cultivation insights, Otan Ju's detailed explanation, and the author was marked. There were cultivation methods and explanations, but it had to be at least a 5th-degree realm expert to be able to cultivate it. At this time, no matter how envious Wang Sheng was, he could only look at it. But not being able to cultivate it did not mean that Wang Sheng could not read it at least once. There were many high-level cultivation methods, especially cultivation insights, which were extremely valuable to Wang Sheng. The little person with battle consciousness immediately reacted to this Ao Tianju and began to try to decipher the aperture points of Ao Tianju according to this detailed explanation. Wang Sheng used the combat terminal to take a picture, and if he needed it in the future, he could sell this Ao Tianju's detailed explanation. What made Wang Sheng surprised was that there was a green-colored metal token in the storage ring, and the shape was exactly the same as the Worry-Free City's killer token that Wang Sheng had obtained previously, just that the color was different. A green-colored token was at least a 5th-grade assassin, and Wang Sheng still did not know what grade Tang Ao's killer token was. Wang Sheng knew that many experts would use the identity of a Worry-Free City's killer to gain experience, but he did not expect that even a 5th-degree realm Tang Ao would actually use this method. A green-colored killer token. He really wanted it. There was nothing much left to see, a few sets of clothes, and a few empty jade bottles. Needless to ask, those jade bottles were filled with some kind of pills and had already been used up. The 3/4-degree realm experts were not empty-handed. Although they did not have a storage ring like Tang Ao, but each of them brought a small bag with them. Unfortunately, there were only some clothes and empty medicine bottles. Not a single good thing could be found. But among the 3/4-degree realm experts, one of them also had a killer token of Worry-Free City, but it was silver in color, and the worst one was a 3rd-grade assassin or 4th or 5th-grade assassin. Coming out to chase after Wang Sheng, they actually did not bring much supplies into the forest. They deserved to be exhausted to death by Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng did not sympathize with them at all. After using the fastest speed to leave the miasma region, Wang Sheng heaved a sigh of relief. Even with the activated charcoal filter layer and the antidote pill, it was not a completely targeted detoxification effect, and staying in there for a long time was not a good thing. Even so, Wang Sheng felt that the miasma had affected his body quite a bit during this period. Although it was not to the point of being weak, but there was indeed some weakening. This kind of weakening could bring about a lot of trouble, but in the Thousand Despair grounds, it was better to recover as much as possible. Next, Wang Sheng's plan was to find a relatively safe place to recuperate. Then, he would carefully ponder and test whether his origin soul could split. After that, he would swallow the remaining 2 origin soul rocks like a piranha. Chapter 82. Many people did not pay attention to this kind of small injury, but over time, it would cause great damage to the body. Wang Sheng had already experienced this before. When Wang Sheng's origin soul was just able to absorb spiritual energy, Wang Sheng found that the spiritual energy did not initially strengthen his body, but bit by bit to repair the hidden injuries that he had suffered during his training on Earth. It took a lot of effort. With that lesson in mind, Wang Sheng would definitely pay attention and not make the same mistake again. After going over a mountain in front, there was a seemingly large plain. Of course, it was also a dense forest now, covered with dense vegetation. However, the little person with combat awareness seemed to feel that this place was different, and it gave Wang Sheng a feeling of familiarity. Wang Sheng did not know why. He stood at the top of the mountain and looked around. His strengthened eyes did not see any strong aura in this area. This meant that it was relatively safe. Wang Sheng discovered that he could sense aura when he was in Xiangling City. If there was a strong cultivator with a strong hostility or battle intent, they would emit a kind of faint aura, and Wang Sheng could faintly sense it. Since there was no strange aura in this area, and the little person with combat awareness did not give any warning, Wang Sheng was a little relieved. He then carefully went down the mountain and touched the center of the plain. After walking for almost a day, Wang Sheng then understood why the little person with combat awareness felt a sense of familiarity. On the morning of the second day, Wang Sheng found some traces of human life in the dense jungle. To be more precise, it was traces left by humans who did not know how many years ago. In this area of the plain, under the dense vegetation, Wang Sheng found the ruins of a small village. The village was not big. It was the kind of small village with a dozen or so families. All the houses in the village were close to collapse, and it was unknown how many years they had been covered by all kinds of vegetation. Anyway, according to Wang Sheng's experience, it would take at least 200 or 300 years to become this dilapidated. There should have been humans living in the land of despair a few hundred years ago. This was the conclusion Wang Sheng drew from the ruins of this small village. As for why it became a ground of despair, Wang Sheng did not know. Probably not many people knew either. This place was not bad. There weren't any particularly strong demonic beasts in the plains. It was suitable for Wang Sheng to rest for a few days. Most importantly, the surrounding vegetation allowed Wang Sheng to find a lot of edible things. It must be known that Wang Sheng had led so many experts around for so many days, and the supplies he brought with him were almost depleted. This was a good opportunity to replenish them. After carefully searching the small village, Wang Sheng first found a well. This was the water source of the villagers in the past. At that time, it had been well maintained. The walls and mouth of the well were all made of stone. It was very sturdy and deep underground, so it did not collapse. There were plants growing around the well. They grew from the periphery and covered the mouth of the well. Wang Sheng simply cleaned them up and the mouth of the well was cleared. He used his helmet to get some water and tested it with some insects. It was not poisonous. It was a good place to replenish water. In addition, Wang Sheng walked around the village and found the cellars of 2 families. However, although they were called cellars, they were directly dug out from the ground. Now that more than half of them had collapsed, they were useless. There was a particularly thick tree in the village. It was unknown whether it was there in the past or it grew like this after it was destroyed. In any case, 4 or 5 people like Wang Sheng would not be able to carry it. The lowest branch of the tree became Wang Sheng's shelter. There was a wide canopy covering it. It was also high enough from the ground, about 15 to 16 meters. Birds might not be able to see it. Even if the demonic beasts below could see it, they might not be able to come up. The most beautiful thing was that the place had a circumference of 2 meters. It was wide enough. Other than the lack of a roof and walls, it was definitely an ideal place to stay. Wang Sheng spent half a day cutting some branches and built a tree house on top of the tree. This was the easiest thing for a jungle expert who was proficient in wilderness survival. In this way, the treehouse was much safer and more comfortable. By the time he finished arranging everything, it was already evening. After a simple meal, Wang Sheng set up some traps in the surroundings. Then, he went into the treehouse and had a good sleep. This was the most comfortable sleep Wang Sheng had ever had since he entered the land of Thousand Despair. In the past few days, there was always a group of powerful tailing behind him. There were also many unknown dangers in front of him. Wang Sheng did not dare to sleep soundly. Even when he slept, he kept one eye open. Although Wang Sheng's cultivation and strong physique allowed him to cope with all these, no matter how much cultivation he had, it could not compare to real sleep, especially deep sleep. Wang Sheng was indeed tired. Mentally, he was also very tired. He slept all the way until dawn. His treehouse was well arranged, and there were no mosquitoes to disturb him. This sleep was especially sweet. Unfortunately, he was in a dangerous situation. Even in such a state, Wang Sheng still maintained his vigilance. He did not rest thoroughly enough. The birds chirping woke Wang Sheng up. These birds could not be considered monsters. They were just ordinary birds. In a land of Thousand Despair, ordinary animals could be found everywhere. Not all of them were powerful monsters. In fact, it was a complete biosphere. There was a bottom and a top of the food chain. As soon as he poked his head out of the treehouse, Wang Sheng suddenly sensed danger. With a flip of his hand, a Glock 17 appeared in his hand. He quickly pointed the muzzle at the source of the danger. Only then did Wang Sheng realize that there was a giant wolf crouching under the tree where his treehouse was. At this moment, it was staring fiercely at Wang Sheng, who had just poked its head out. The giant wolf was brownish-black in color, very similar to the color of the ground. Its body was 3 meters long. Just its head alone was bigger than Wang Sheng's torso. When it opened its bloody mouth, it could definitely swallow two of Wang Sheng's heads. Wang Sheng had only been in this world for a short time. He could not call out the giant wolf's official name. He also did not know the level of the giant wolf. But to be able to survive in the land of thousand despair until now, it was definitely not an ordinary monster. At this depth of the land of thousand despair, this wolf's cultivation was at least at the 5th degree realm. When the giant wolf came, Wang Sheng had no idea. He was sleeping too soundly that he did not notice it. The little person with battle awareness was obviously pondering O Tianju. He did not do his job well and let the giant wolf come under the tree. Fortunately, the tree that Wang Sheng chose was sturdy and thick enough. The tree house was also high enough that the giant wolf could not jump up. Otherwise, Wang Sheng would have become the giant wolf's food in the middle of the night. At the thought of this, Wang Sheng broke out in cold sweat. Without the threat of the pursuer, he was actually so careless. This really shouldn't have happened. Chapter 83. The giant wolf couldn't come up and couldn't reach Wang Sheng, which made Wang Sheng feel a little more relaxed for the time being. Since his life wasn't in danger, Wang Sheng could rest assured and analyze the situation. There was only one giant wolf under the tree. Wang Sheng used the infrared telescope to take a look. Indeed, there was nothing else. He couldn't see the image of the giant wolf from a few hundred meters away. A lone wolf. Wang Sheng smiled. His nickname on Earth was Lone Wolf. Because he always carried out dangerous missions alone, he was called that by his comrades. Wang Sheng had also learned about the habits of wolves because of his survival in the wild and certain missions. Because of this, Wang Sheng knew better than anyone else how terrifying a lone wolf was. No matter what the reason was for leaving the wolf pack, generally, a lone wolf that left the pack would become unusually sinister due to the lack of cooperation from its companions. That was just an ordinary wolf on Earth. In this world, in this place, a lone wolf with at least 5th degree realm strength. Even if Tang, Ao, Song Ming, and Shicheng were alive, they might not be its opponent. Now, Wang Sheng had to face such a ferocious demonic beast. Moreover, this demonic beast could hide its aura and strength, which meant that this lone wolf was more sinister than ordinary demonic beasts. Staying in the tree, Wang Sheng could be said to be temporarily safe. Lone wolf wouldn't waste his physical strength and spiritual power to cut down such a big tree. But Wang Sheng couldn't come down. After a long time, Wang Sheng might not be able to outlast Lone Wolf. Should he use the sniper rifle? Wang Sheng thought about it and decided not to use it first. If he fired here, it would attract a large number of fierce demonic beasts. He would have to give up the little nest he had just made. His recuperation plan and spirit source upgrade plan would all be interrupted. If it wasn't necessary, Wang Sheng wouldn't use the sniper rifle easily. Looking at the indifferent gaze of Lone Wolf staring at the food, Wang Sheng knew that this guy had already regarded himself as a delicious meal and would not give up easily. Lone wolves had unimaginable patience and tolerance when waiting for the opportunity to hunt. This guy could definitely drag it out with Wang Sheng for a few days and nights without getting tired. Wang Sheng realized that he was really lucky. Even though he was targeted by a ferocious lone wolf while he was asleep, he didn't carelessly lose his life. Although this guy's strength was outstanding, he couldn't jump so high, and he didn't have the ability to cut down trees. This was really Wang Sheng's luck. Should he just waste time like this? After pondering for a while, Wang Sheng suddenly realized that this might be a very good opportunity. Under the tree, Lone Wolf could bring him the pressure of death at any time, but it would not threaten his life for a while. However, it could drive away some of the other monsters that might harm him. At the very least, it could fight with the other monsters and let him reap the benefits. It seemed like a very good bodyguard. With its protection, Wang Sheng could temporarily stay on the tree and ponder over the changes in his source spirit, while also cultivating his body. Yesterday, when he replenished the water and food, Wang Sheng had replenished his own consumption. If he didn't go down from the tree, Wang Sheng could persist for at least 3 days. Doing what he said, Wang Sheng went back to the treehouse, half lying down, and entered into the state of cultivation. This was not the state of primeval chaos pillar, but it was the most comfortable position for Wang Sheng. It was also the most free position in his source spirit space. The small person with fighting consciousness had stopped pondering over Aotianju. That deceptive cultivation method was far from what Wang Sheng could touch, but it made the small person with fighting consciousness lose its vigilance. However, the small person with fighting consciousness was not something that Wang Sheng could directly control, so it was understandable for him to make this kind of low-level mistake. Qi Yin source spirit was now very big. At least its body was several feet long. Otherwise, it would be impossible to swallow the smallest rock. However, its current size compared to the remaining 2 rocks was still far from it. If he still followed the previous method of swallowing, Qi Yin source spirit would at least be 10 times bigger than it was now. Then it could touch the second rock. As for the third rock, he would wait until it was 100 times bigger. Splitting the source spirit. If this idea was known by the natives of this world, they would definitely scold Wang Sheng for being whimsical, forgetting his ancestors, and committing treason. Could the source spirit be split? Could the source spirit also be split? This was simply deviating from the orthodox path, okay? For Wang Sheng, all of this was not a problem at all. Even the carp Wang Sheng, who they thought could not upgrade, could jump over the dragon gate and give out 13 kinds of changes. At some stage, it was not a problem to split into many small source spirits. Before splitting, Wang Sheng first tried to see if the current source spirit could gnaw those 2 huge rocks. Anyway, it was made of spiritual qi. If it was possible, then he could use this size of Qi Yin source spirit to gnaw slowly. As expected, after reaching this size, the strength of Qi Yan's bite could not do anything to the giant rock. But when Wang Sheng only aimed at a particularly small corner, he found that the Qi Yin source spirit could leave a trace. The big mouth could not concentrate its strength on a small part, so it could not do anything to the giant rock. But as long as the mouth was small enough, it was not impossible to bite off a piece. In other words, Wang Sheng's guess was established. The next step was naturally to think about how to split the Qi Yin source spirit. Just this process was a big problem for the cultivators of this world. The cultivators absolutely could not imagine how a complete source spirit could be divided into 2 halves. For the natives, it was a problem, but for Wang Sheng, it was not something unimaginable. In the end, the source spirit was nothing more than the manifestation of spiritual qi. Since it was condensed from spiritual qi, then why couldn't it be divided into 2 halves? Moreover, in Wang Sheng's mind, there were countless real animal divisions on Earth that could be used as a reference. For example, earthworms, cut in 2, each section could grow into a new earthworm. Another example was cell division. The earthworm example was a bit complicated. Wang Sheng did not want to use it as a reference. Cells were the simplest. They could be directly divided. Wang Sheng only needed to imagine his own Qi Yin source spirit as a cell composed of spiritual qi and directly and crudely control the division. The little person with battle consciousness was obviously frightened by Wang Sheng's idea, curled up in a corner of the source spirit space, motionless, staring at the Qi Yin source spirit at a loss. If someone could see Wang Sheng's source spirit space now, they would definitely be scared. The originally complete source spirit was slowly thinning from the middle. The connection between the dragon head and the fish body was getting thinner and thinner, gradually leaving only a little bit, and finally this little bit was no longer connected, directly breaking into 2 pieces. Then, the dragon's head and the fish's body began to change. One grew a head, the other a body. Under Wang Sheng's control, one horn-kissed source spirit turned into 2 identical horn-kissed source spirits that were only half the size. The 2 apertures of the source spirit did not change. They were still 2. They did not change with the splitting of the source spirit, but each occupied the dantian and chest area of the body, absorbing spiritual qi. What changed was only the source spirit itself. Chapter 84. In this world, no one had ever thought of splitting a soul into 2. Firstly, there was no such thing as an external thought. Secondly, The importance of soul made it so that no one dared to risk their cultivation. Only Wang Sheng, who came from another world, dared to think about this kind of thing. Of course, more importantly, Wang Sheng had the support of modern technology and knowledge from Earth. If it was a cultivator from this world, even if they had this idea, they might not be able to do it. There was one reason that could not be ignored, and that was Lone Wolf under the tree. Lone Wolf, who was always eyeing him, brought great pressure to Wang Sheng. If Wang Sheng could not improve his strength in a short period of time, it was very likely that he would not be able to outlast Lone Wolf and could only use firearms. Once he used firearms, it would attract even more ferocious monsters. If Wang Sheng did not improve his strength, he would not even have a chance to escape. In the end, Wang Sheng's strength improvement was the most important thing. Under this kind of pressure, Wang Sheng could be considered to be fighting with his back to the river. He did not even carefully think about what would happen after the soul split and rashly began to split. Fortunately, he succeeded. Otherwise, he did not know what kind of tragic ending he would have. It seemed that Wang Sheng was a bit reckless, but in fact it was not. Wang Sheng's soul was originally transformed from a remnant soul carp, and that remnant soul carp was actually one of a group of carp souls that could devour each other. In essence, it was originally a split body. If it could be divided into 100 parts, then what was the point of splitting into two? It was precisely because of this that Wang Sheng was willing to do whatever it took to get what he wanted. Of course, the result was not out of Wang Sheng's expectations. It was quite easy to complete the splitting of the soul. However, after the splitting was successful, Wang Sheng immediately stopped. He did not want his soul to become two remnant souls after splitting into two, so he had to carefully check it. The little person with the battle consciousness had been observing the entire process. When the split souls were completed and Wang Sheng was inspecting them, he also jumped out and observed the two souls for a while. Then he returned to the corner and pondered about something. The two soul essences didn't seem to have any problems. Their absorption of spiritual qi was the same as before, and there wasn't any part of their bodies that was incomplete. They were normal soul essences. Letting out a long sigh, Wang Sheng's consciousness returned to reality from his source spirit space. Looking at his watch, he realized that 8 or 9 hours had already passed. His stomach was growling with hunger. He poked his head out of the treehouse and saw that Lone Wolf was still guarding under the tree. However, there seemed to be an additional trace of doubt in his eyes. When he saw Wang Sheng poke his head out, he immediately became fierce and cold. Wang Sheng ate his fill and did not care about the Lone Wolf under the tree. He once again entered his cultivation state, and his consciousness returned to his source spirit space. Splitting his source spirit was not Wang Sheng's final goal. Splitting meant that his strength would be scattered. Wang Sheng did not want his body to be in a bad condition because of the splitting of his source spirit. Therefore, after successfully splitting, Wang Sheng had to reunite his source spirit. Relatively speaking, this was a lot simpler. Wang Sheng had personally seen the scene of the 100 soul carps swallowing each other and fusing into one. Moreover, after successfully splitting his source spirit, he had the experience of separating them, so it was even easier to combine them. Of course, Wang Sheng would not use that kind of swallowing method to combine them, because no matter how he swallowed, there would always be a process of digestion and fusion. During this process, it was inevitable that some spiritual qi would be lost. Wang Sheng was not willing to let the spiritual qi that he had painstakingly absorbed be lost, so he could not use that kind of inefficient method in the process of combining them. Since it was directly broken into two pieces to grow separately when it was separated, then when it was time to combine, Wang Sheng used the simplest and most brutal method to forcibly fuse them. He let the two source spirits approach each other and then forcefully squeeze them into each other's bodies. Originally, the spiritual qi came from the same source and also existed in Wang Sheng's source spirit space. So the fusion of the two source spirits was simply a natural thing. Very quickly, the two source spirits fused together, little by little fusing into each other. In Wang Sheng's mind, It only took less than half an hour for them to become one again. The two source spirits seemed to have no change from before. It was far from the strange change of swallowing each other. Thinking about it, it was normal. After all the changes were in Wang Sheng's source spirit space. It was not like the lake where a slight difference in the environment would cause the size of the source spirit to be different. It was completely different from Wang Sheng's. Splitting into two and then merging back into one. Wang Sheng checked it up and down, left and right, back and forth many times, but he did not find any problems. Only then did he happily return to reality from his cultivation state. Looking at the time, it was already the middle of the night. Lone Wolf was still under the tree. A pair of walnut-sized eyes glowed with a lush green light, like two small green lanterns. This fellow was really patient. It actually wanted to waste time with Wang Sheng. Wang Sheng did not care about it. He vigilantly took a nap, and when he opened his eyes, it was already dawn. Yesterday, Wang Sheng had spent an entire day and night successfully splitting and merging his origin soul. What he needed to do today was very simple. It was to familiarize himself with these two processes. The faster the better. Lone Wolf under the tree was clearly filled with doubts. In his eyes, the little fellow on the tree was becoming stronger and weaker for a while, becoming stronger and weaker for a while, becoming stronger and weaker for a while. It was unpredictable. He did not know what was happening at all. But there was one thing that Lone Wolf firmly believed: the fellow on the tree would sooner or later be his food. For an entire day and night, Wang Sheng practiced the splitting and merging of his source spirit. Wang Sheng was not greedy. He did not immediately split his source spirit into more. He just divided it into two and then combined it again. The process took less and less time, and Wang Sheng became more and more familiar with the splitting and merging of his source spirit. During his practice, Wang Sheng also discovered a very interesting phenomenon. That was when Wang Sheng split his source spirit into two, the wolf under the tree would reveal a puzzled look. After a few times, Wang Sheng realized that after his source spirit split, it would give people the illusion that his strength had decreased. This was a very good disguise. If Wang Sheng did not want the whole world to look for him to find the secret to upgrading his unranked source spirit, then as long as he split his source spirit into many parts, he would give people the feeling that he was unranked, and the rumors would naturally disappear without a trace. After spending a full 5 days and 5 nights with the wolf, the food that Wang Sheng had prepared had already been consumed. Finally, Wang Sheng made the decision to face this wolf. After 5 days and 5 nights, the wolf below had at most drunk some dew nearby. Its body was already extremely hungry. After Wang Sheng confirmed that the wolf's body had already lost a small amount of weight, he took out a special energy bar from his storage ring, peeled off the packaging, and threw it down, right in front of the wolf. Chapter 85. Wang Sheng's equipment warehouse had been equipped with 7 energy bars, which was equivalent to 7 days of rations. However, 6 of the 7 energy bars were ordinary energy bars for individual rations, while the last one was a special energy bar for Wang Sheng. Ordinary energy bars for individual rations were mainly composed of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats, as well as some essential trace elements and electrolyte additives. They contained a lot of calories and could replenish various elements. One energy bar could provide a soldier like Wang Sheng with enough energy for a day's activities. 6 of them were ordinary energy bars. The reason why the last one was special was because it was completely different from the other 6. Although it was special, it wasn't that special. That was because on Earth, this so-called energy bar was relatively easy to find. It was just chocolate. However, Wang Sheng's requirements were higher. He wanted pure dark chocolate without any artificial fat substitutes. The reason why he wanted pure chocolate was because chocolate could replenish calories and calm Wang Sheng's mind. Usually, at the final stage of a mission, before he was ready to fire, Wang Sheng would chew on some chocolate. That was how this unique energy bar came about. Lone Wolf had been hungry for 5 days and 5 nights, not including the time before it discovered Wang Sheng. Now, A piece of sweet dark chocolate fell from the sky. After all, Lone Wolf was just a demon beast. Most of the time, it acted on instinct. It couldn't possibly know what other plans Wang Sheng had. However, Lone Wolf was still very vigilant. It sniffed a little and didn't touch the chocolate at first. Wang Sheng was also very patient and didn't care about it. After a few bugs had nibbled on the chocolate for a while, Lone Wolf sniffed a few times and blew away the bugs on the chocolate. It looked up at Wang Sheng and saw Wang Sheng's playful gaze. Lone Wolf moved forward and sniffed. It stuck out its tongue and licked it. Then, it bit the chocolate bar into its mouth. After chewing a few times, it swallowed it. Wang Sheng finally smiled. It might seem that feeding the Lone Wolf high-calorie chocolate was supporting the enemy, but the Lone Wolf had actually fallen into Wang Sheng's trap. Most dog owners on Earth knew that canines could not eat chocolate. Perhaps it would be fine if the dosage was small, but once the dosage was high, the delicious chocolate would be a fatal poison to canines. The theobromine in chocolate could not be effectively metabolized by canines. Canines would die if they consumed more than a certain amount. This world might be different from Earth, but Wang Sheng still needed to take a gamble. If this method did not work, Wang Sheng could only use a sniper rifle. Wang Sheng had made the right bet. After Lone Wolf ate that big bar of chocolate, white foam came out of his mouth after a while. Looking at this scene, Wang Sheng's face finally showed a smile. Wang Sheng did not know what the lethal dose of chocolate was for wolves in this world, but Lone Wolf's reaction showed that even if it was not lethal, it was enough to make it show symptoms of poisoning. That piece of chocolate was enough to guarantee Wang Sheng a day of strenuous exercise. It was a full kilogram of pure chocolate. Even if Lone Wolf's body was several times larger than the wolves on Earth, this amount was enough to poison Lone Wolf. The symptoms of chocolate poisoning in canines included vomiting and convulsions. Just now, Lone Wolf's mouth was already foaming, which meant that it had started to vomit. Then, Wang Sheng waited for it to convulse. Holding the longbow in his hand and a long arrow, Wang Sheng began to aim at Lone Wolf's body. Under normal circumstances, Wang Sheng's bow and arrow would not be able to penetrate the 5th-degree Lone Wolf's fur. But now that it was vomiting and convulsing, Wang Sheng had an opportunity to take advantage of. Lone Wolf rolled around under the tree in pain. There was a series of coughing sounds coming from its throat, as if something was about to come out of its stomach. Its forelegs also began to twitch irregularly. Right at this moment, Wang Sheng took advantage of the moment when Lone Wolf rolled around to reveal its stomach, knocked an arrow, and shot it down. Ding! That long arrow accurately hit Lone Wolf's soft stomach. But out of Wang Sheng's expectations, even if it was Lone Wolf's soft stomach, the long arrow only made a sound of a hard object colliding with it, and then the long arrow bounced off. The bow and arrow that Wang Sheng had high hopes for was actually unable to hurt Lone Wolf's fur. This scene directly made Wang Sheng's jaw drop. Even its fur was so strong. What realm was this Lone Wolf in? Perhaps it was Wang Sheng's arrow attack and the discomfort in its stomach that made Lone Wolf feel pain. Howl! Lone Wolf struggled and let out a loud howl, a towering aura emerging from its body. Wang Sheng's eyes almost turned into bronze bells. This fellow actually knew how to hide his strength from the start, appearing so weak, which made Wang Sheng think that this fellow's cultivation was perhaps at the 5th-degree realm. Unexpectedly, now that it had completely erupted, looking at the aura, it was at least at the 6th-degree realm. To Wang Sheng, what the 6th-degree realm's performance was not clear to Wang Sheng, but this invulnerable giant wolf made Wang Sheng fall into an awkward situation. Lone Wolf was poisoned. This was a huge opportunity. Whether it was to kill or escape, perhaps he could buy some time. But Lone Wolf's performance made Wang Sheng a little hesitant. To reach the invulnerable realm, could he only rely on a sniper rifle to attack the eyes? Or a high-explosive grenade? Whether it was a sniper rifle or a high-explosive grenade, it was not the outcome that Wang Sheng wanted. Since he had already come to this world, he had to slowly adapt to the rules of this world. If he used his trump card every time something happened, then, after a few uses, the equipment that Wang Sheng brought from Earth would be used up. By that time, what would Wang Sheng do? If he could not adapt to this world's power system in the shortest time possible, Wang Sheng even doubted that he would have the chance to find the girl of his dreams. Looking at the giant wolf rolling under the tree in pain, countless thoughts flashed through Wang Sheng's mind. Suddenly, he gritted his teeth and made a decision. The longbow disappeared, and a long sword appeared in Wang Sheng's hand. This was also a good weapon left behind by a certain tracking fellow. He stared at Lone Wolf, looking for a suitable opportunity. Suddenly, Lone Wolf rolled to the bottom of the tree and was howling with his mouth wide open. Now's the time. Wang Sheng grabbed the hilt of the sword with both hands and jumped down from the tree, accurately jumping towards the giant wolf. From a height of 15 meters, Wang Sheng only needed slightly more than a second to fall. This 1 second was enough for Wang Sheng to adjust the direction of the tip of the sword. Using the momentum from jumping down from the tree, the muscles on both of Wang Sheng's arms bulged. He used almost all the strength in his body and accurately stabbed the sword into the giant mouth of the howling lone wolf. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.